Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, she thought it was rust at first. But as she cleaned the inside of the chest freezer left by the previous tenant, she saw it clearly. Her name scratched into the metal beneath a layer of frost. The grooves were deep, jagged, done from the inside. Hannah Miller stood frozen, staring at the 5 letters that spelled H-A-N-N-A, missing the final H of her name, but unmistakably meant for her. The basement air felt suddenly thinner as she backed away from the freezer. She had moved into the small rental house on Oak Ridge Drive just 3 days ago. The landlord had mentioned that the previous tenant left in a hurry, abandoning a few appliances in the basement. "You can keep them or toss them," he had said with a shrug. "No extra charge." The freezer had been unplugged when she found it, tucked against the far wall of the unfinished basement. Its white exterior was dingy but serviceable. Hannah had thought it might be useful for meal prepping, something she had been meaning to start. She had plugged it in yesterday to test if it worked, and today she had come down with cleaning supplies to wipe away years of neglect. That's when she found her name. Her first instinct was to call the landlord, but something stopped her. What would she even say? "There's my name scratched inside the freezer and I'm freaked out." He would think she was looking for an excuse to break the lease, or worse, that she had done it herself. Instead, she called her sister. "You need to get out of there," Melissa said immediately. "That's not coincidence, Han. That's not normal." "It's probably just some weird prank," Hannah replied, though she didn't believe it. Maybe the last tenant was also named Hannah. "Then why did you call me sounding like you've seen a ghost?" Hannah had no answer for that. Later that evening, Hannah found herself searching online for information about the previous tenant. The landlord had been vague about why they left so suddenly, mumbling something about a job relocation. Hannah had thought nothing of it at the time. She discovered that the last person to rent the modest 2-bedroom house at 1437 Oak Ridge Drive was a man named Curtis Becker. He had lived there for almost 3 years before disappearing 8 months ago. There was no mention of a job relocation. According to a local news article from January, Becker's family had reported him missing after he failed to show up for Christmas at his parents' home in Michigan. His car was still in the driveway of the rental. His cell phone was found on the kitchen counter. His wallet, with all credit cards and ID intact, was in the bedroom. He had simply vanished. Hannah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air seeping through the poorly insulated windows of her new home. She closed her laptop and glanced toward the basement door, thinking about that freezer and her name etched into its interior wall. The next morning, Hannah called Detective Lori Simmons of the Riverside Police Department. She had found the detective's name in the article about Curtis Becker's disappearance. "I'm the new tenant at 1437 Oak Ridge," Hannah explained after introducing herself. "I found something strange in the basement." Detective Simmons arrived 2 hours later. She was a tall woman with prematurely gray hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. Her eyes were sharp but tired, scanning the basement methodically as Hannah led her to the freezer. "I was cleaning it yesterday," Hannah explained, "and I found this." She pointed to the name scratched into the metal. Simmons lined in, examining the jagged letters. "And your name is Hannah?" "Yes, with an H at the end." "Yes, The detective pulled out her phone and took several photographs. Did you touch anything else in the freezer? Just the inside walls while I was cleaning. I didn't move anything. Was there anything in it when you found it? No, it was empty and unplugged. Detective Simmons straightened up and looked at Hannah with an unreadable expression. Ms. Miller, the investigation into Curtis Becker's disappearance is still open. We didn't find any evidence of foul play in the house, which is why it was released back to the property owner. But this, she gestured to the freezer, this is potentially significant. Why? Hannah asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Because we never searched this freezer. It wasn't here during our initial investigation of the property. Hannah felt her stomach drop. What do you mean it wasn't here? The landlord told me it belonged to the previous tenant. I personally conducted the search of this basement in January, Simmons replied. There was no freezer. The implications hung in the air between them. If the freezer wasn't in the basement when the police searched the house after Becker's disappearance, where had it been, and how did it get back here? Most importantly, who had scratched Hannah's name inside it, and why was the final H missing? In the days that followed, Hannah's life transformed into something unrecognizable. The freezer was taken as evidence. Forensic teams combed through her new home, paying special attention to the basement. She stayed with her sister while the investigation proceeded. Detective Simmons kept her updated on the findings, which were disturbing in their implication. The freezer had no serial number. It had been deliberately removed. The interior showed traces of industrial-grade cleaning products, but advanced forensic techniques revealed minute blood residue in the seal around the edge. The blood matched Curtis Becker. But it was her name, that haunted Hannah most. How could someone have known who would rent the house after Becker's disappearance? Had she been targeted? Was this all some elaborate trap? The investigation uncovered that Curtis Becker had been a loner with few friends in the area. He worked remotely as a data analyst and rarely interacted with neighbors. His digital footprint revealed nothing unusual until detectives found a locked folder on a cloud backup of his computer. Inside were hundreds of photos of women named Hannah or Anna. Some were celebrities, some were social media screenshots, some appeared to be taken surreptitiously in public places. And among them, mixed in with the others, were 3 photos of Hannah Miller, one at a coffee shop, one walking to her car outside her previous apartment building, one checking her mail. Curtis Becker had been stalking her, a woman he had never met as far as anyone could tell. A woman who, by some twisted coincidence or deliberate manipulation, ended up renting his former home after he vanished. The forensic psychologist consulted by the police suggested that Becker likely suffered from erotomania, a delusional disorder where the affected person believes another person, often a stranger, is in love with them. Something about Hannah had triggered his obsession. But that still didn't explain the freezer or Becker's disappearance, or how her name came to be scratched inside. 3 weeks into the investigation, another piece of the puzzle emerged. The landlord, Kenneth Ward, was brought in for questioning after phone records showed multiple calls between him and Becker in the weeks before the disappearance. Ward initially denied any special relationship with his tenant, but eventually admitted that Becker had approached him with an unusual request. He wanted to know who was looking at rental properties in the area, Ward confessed. He offered me money to tell him about young women who might be interested in his place if it became available. I thought it was weird, but he said he was thinking of moving and wanted to help find the right next tenant. I figured he was just being picky about who would live in his house after him. Ward had given Becker a list of people who had inquired about similar properties. Hannah's name was on that list. "Did you put the freezer back in the basement after the police investigation?" Detective Simmons asked Ward. "What? No," the landlord replied, genuinely confused. "I've never seen a freezer in that house." The case broke open when police obtained surveillance footage from a storage facility 10 miles from the Oak Ridge Drive house. The footage showed Curtis Becker renting a unit in December, just before his disappearance. He was accompanied by another man who kept his face angled away from the cameras. When police raided the storage unit, they found tools, cleaning supplies, and a journal detailing Becker's obsession with women named Hannah, a name shared by his mother who had abandoned him as a child. The journal entries became increasingly erratic over time, describing a partnership with someone he referred to only as the facilitator. According to the journal, this facilitator had promised to help Becker become part of Hannah forever through some kind of ritual or process that was never clearly explained. The final entry, dated December 22nd, read simply, "Tonight I become the vessel." 4 days after this discovery, a man named Howard Jane was arrested trying to break into Hannah Miller's sister's house, where Hannah had been staying. In Jane's van, police found duct tape, plastic sheeting, surgical tools, and documents belonging to Curtis Becker. Howard Jane was the facilitator. Under interrogation, Jane revealed that he had met Becker in an online forum for people with consuming passions, as he called them. Jane had a history of encouraging vulnerable people to act on their darkest impulses, though he had never been charged with a crime before. Curtis wanted to be close to his Hannah, Jane explained with disturbing calmness. "I helped him understand that physical proximity wasn't enough. He needed to make a grand gesture. That gesture, it seemed, involved Becker's own life." According to Jane, Becker had willingly climbed into the freezer, believing that his sacrifice would somehow spiritually bind him to the object of his obsession. Jane had locked him inside and left him to die, then moved the freezer to the storage unit until the police investigation of the house was complete. "I put it back in the basement myself," Jane admitted. "I wanted her to find it. I wanted her to know that someone loved her enough to die for her." When asked about the name scratched inside, Jane smiled. "Curtis did that himself before he got in. He wanted to leave his mark, but he was already getting cold, you see. His fingers couldn't finish the last letter." Hannah Miller never returned to the house on Oak Ridge Drive. The freezer, with its chilling message, became key evidence in the case against Howard Jane, who was eventually convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Curtis Becker's body was never found. Jane claimed he had disposed of it after moving the freezer back to the basement, but refused to say where or how. Sometimes Hannah wonders if that's the truth. Sometimes, in her darkest moments, she imagines Becker's body might still be somewhere in that house, hidden behind a wall or beneath the concrete floor of the basement, waiting, watching. And sometimes she wonders about that missing H, the final letter of her name that Becker couldn't complete as the cold overcame him. As if her name, like his life, remained forever unfinished. She wonders if somewhere in that house there's another message waiting to be found, another piece of a puzzle that can never truly be complete. In her new home, 2,000 miles away, Hannah keeps no freezer. She checks behind doors before entering rooms. She sleeps with the lights on. And she never, ever uses her full name anymore. Crime 2, the small town of Oak Ridge, Maine, had always been known for its tranquility and close-knit community. It was the kind of place where people rarely locked their doors at night, where neighbors brought casseroles when someone was sick, and where everyone knew everyone else's business. This peaceful existence made what happened to Emily Keller all the more unsettling. Emily was 28 when she purchased the old Victorian house on Maple Street. Built in 1887, the house had changed hands numerous times over the decades, but none of its owners had stayed longer than 5 years. Local real estate agents attributed this to the maintenance costs of such an old property, but longtime residents exchanged knowing glances whenever the subject arose. Emily didn't mind the whispers. After graduating from Boston University with a degree in library science, she had secured a position at the Oak Ridge Public Library and fallen in love with the quiet charm of the town. The Victorian, with its intricate woodwork and spacious rooms, felt like home from the moment she stepped through the front door. The fact that she could afford it on her modest salary seemed like a stroke of incredible luck. In the weeks after moving in, Emily dedicated herself to restoring the house's former glory. She spent weekends stripping layers of wallpaper, refinishing hardwood floors, and carefully repairing ornate ceiling medallions. Her colleagues at the library noted how she came to work with paint in her hair and plaster dust under her fingernails, but also how happy she seemed, how her eyes lit up when she talked about uncovering original features hidden by previous renovations. "It's like the house is revealing itself to me," she once told Margaret, the head librarian, over lunch. "Every weekend I discover something new." Margaret had lived in Oak Ridge her entire life. She remembered the house on Maple Street as it had been decades earlier when the Donovan family lived there. She remembered the daughter, Lillian, who had been her classmate in elementary school, but she didn't mention any of this to Emily. Some memories were better left undisturbed. 3 months after moving in, Emily began working on the master bedroom. The previous owners had converted a walk-in closet into a small office space, but Emily wanted to restore it to its original purpose. On a Saturday morning in October, she started removing the drywall that had been used to square off the closet's odd angles. The work was dusty and tedious. By mid-afternoon, Emily had removed most of the modern additions and was examining the closet's original dimensions when her hammer knocked against a section of wall that sounded hollow. Curious, she tapped again, confirming the different sound. Using her pry bar, she carefully removed a section of paneling to reveal a small, hidden alcove. Wedged into this secret space was a mirror in an ornate silver frame, its glass shattered but still held together within the frame. Decades of dust had settled over the broken surface, giving it a gray, clouded appearance. Emily carefully pulled it out, surprised by its weight. As she turned it over in her hands, she noticed something written in faded ink at the bottom corner of the frame. "Don't look at her too long." Emily dismissed the message as a strange prank from a previous owner, or perhaps a child who had discovered the hidden space years ago. She set the mirror aside, planning to research its age and perhaps restore it as a decorative piece. That night, she took a photograph of the mirror and posted it on her social media account with the caption, "Look what I found hidden in the wall, Victorian House Hidden Secrets." When Emily didn't show up for work on Monday morning, Margaret didn't immediately worry. It was flu season, after all, and several staff members had already called in sick that month. She left a voicemail checking in and asking Emily to call back when she felt better. By Wednesday, with no response to calls or texts, Margaret's concern had grown into genuine worry. On Thursday morning, Margaret drove to the Victorian on Maple Street. Emily's blue Honda Civic sat in the driveway, exactly where it had been when Margaret had dropped off some books the previous week. She knocked on the front door, receiving no answer. After walking around the perimeter of the house and finding all windows intact and no signs of disturbance, Margaret reluctantly called the local police department. Officer James Whitaker responded to the call. He had known Margaret since childhood and took her concerns seriously, especially given the house's history, though he was careful not to mention this in his official report. After obtaining a warrant based on welfare concerns, Officer Whitaker entered the house on Friday morning, 5 days after Emily had last been seen. The interior of the Victorian was immaculate, showing no signs of struggle or forced entry. Emily's purse sat on the kitchen counter, containing her wallet, keys, and cell phone. In the refrigerator, food had begun to spoil. Upstairs, the master bedroom showed evidence of the renovation project, tools laid out neatly, pieces of drywall stacked in one corner, and plastic sheeting covering portions of the floor. The broken mirror stood propped against the wall beside the closet, its fractured surface reflecting distorted images of the room. Officer Whitaker noted it in his report but didn't attribute any significance to it. More concerning was the complete absence of Emily herself or any indication of where she might have gone. The case quickly became the focus of the small police department. They interviewed neighbors, colleagues, and the few friends Emily had made since moving to Oak Ridge. No one reported seeing anything unusual, and Emily had no known enemies or personal problems. Her bank accounts showed no recent activity, and her passport remained in her desk drawer. It was as if she had simply vanished from inside her locked house. As the investigation continued, Margaret found herself thinking more and more about Lillian Donovan and what had happened in that house decades earlier. The similarities were difficult to ignore. Lillian, too, had been found missing from a locked house with no signs of struggle. Her disappearance had never been solved, eventually filed away as a probable runaway case, despite her parents' insistence that their 17-year-old daughter would never leave voluntarily. 2 weeks into the investigation, Detective Sarah Connors, who had taken over the case, asked to interview Margaret again. Something about the librarian's demeanor during her initial statement had suggested she might know more than she had shared. "Is there anything about the house that might be relevant to our investigation?" Detective Connors asked, watching Margaret's face carefully. "Anything in its history that could help us understand what happened to Emily?" Margaret hesitated, weighing decades of silence against her concern for Emily. There was another disappearance, she finally admitted. In 1973, a girl named Lillian Donovan. She lived in that house with her parents. They found her bedroom door locked from the inside, but she wasn't there when they broke down the door. Detective Connors leaned forward. Was there anything else unusual about Lillian's case? Anything that might connect it to Emily's disappearance? Margaret closed her eyes briefly, remembering. Lillian had been restoring an old mirror she found in the attic. Her mother told me later that they never found the mirror after Lillian disappeared. This information led investigators back to the Victorian house with a renewed focus. They carefully examined the broken mirror Emily had found, now bagged as potential evidence. Under laboratory lighting, technicians discovered that what had appeared to be dust on the mirror's surface included traces of organic material. DNA testing later confirmed it contained skin cells from 2 different individuals, separated by decades. The investigation took an even more disturbing turn when technicians examining the mirror under ultraviolet light discovered a pattern of fingerprints and handprints on the glass, not on the surface. but somehow embedded within the layers of the glass itself, as if someone had pressed their hands against the mirror from the inside. 3 months after Emily's disappearance, with no further leads and no body discovered, the case remained officially open but inactive. The Victorian house on Maple Street stood empty once again, a new for sale sign swaying in the front yard. The broken mirror had been placed in evidence storage, where officers occasionally reported hearing faint tapping sounds coming from the locked room late at night. Margaret often drove past the house on her way home from the library. Sometimes, in the upstairs window that had been Emily's bedroom, she thought she glimpsed a figure standing perfectly still, watching. But when she looked again, there was only the reflection of clouds moving across the glass. In Oak Ridge, parents began warning their children to avoid mirrors at night. Local antique dealers reported customers bringing in old mirrors for disposal rather than resale. And on internet forums dedicated to unsolved mysteries, users shared enhanced versions of Emily's last social media post, claiming that if you zoomed in on the mirror's reflection, you could just make out a woman's face behind Emily's shoulder, a face that didn't belong to anyone present in the room. The case of Emily Keller joined the long list of mysterious disappearances that haunt small towns across America, stories told in hushed voices, embellished over time but never fully explained or forgotten. And in evidence locker 37 at the Oak Ridge Police Department, behind a locked metal door, the broken mirror waited, its fractured surface reflecting nothing but darkness, the warning still visible in faded ink: "Don't look at her too long." Some say that if you stand in front of a mirror at midnight and whisper Emily's name 3 times, you'll see her face appear beside your reflection, her eyes wide with terror, her mouth forming words no one can hear. Others claim this is just a story people tell, a way to make sense of something that defies explanation. But in Oak Ridge, Maine, no one looks in mirrors for too long anymore. And the Victorian house on Maple Street remains empty, waiting for someone else who doesn't know its history, someone else who might discover what lies behind its walls. The truth about what happened to Emily Keller, like what happened to Lillian Donovan before her, remains hidden somewhere between reality and reflection, between what we can see and what we can only sense. Perhaps some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, some truths too disturbing to face directly. After all, as the warning suggested, sometimes looking too long can be dangerous. Sometimes something looks back. Crime 3. Rebecca Morgan had always loved old books. There was something about the worn pages, the faded spines, the smell of aging paper that transported her to different times and places. Living in the quiet suburbs of Millfield, Connecticut, Rebecca's Saturday mornings often consisted of visiting yard sales, hunting for forgotten literary treasures. At 34, she had built a modest but cherished collection that lined the walls of her small home office. It was on an unusually warm spring morning in April 2018 when Rebecca stopped at the Sanderson estate sale. The colonial house on Willow Street had belonged to an elderly woman who had passed away 3 months earlier. According to neighborhood whispers, Eleanor Sanderson had no immediate family, and distant relatives had finally arrived to clear out the property. Rebecca browsed through several boxes of books, eventually selecting a hardcover copy of The Secret Garden. As she handed $3 to the bored-looking nephew managing the sale, she had no idea that this particular book would irreversibly alter the course of her life. That evening, while preparing for bed, Rebecca settled into her reading chair and opened her new acquisition. She was about to begin the first chapter when something slipped from between the pages and landed on her lap. A torn receipt from Harrison's Pharmacy, dated October 12, 2016. She was about to discard it when she noticed writing on the back, a phone number, hastily scrawled in something dark and brownish that had smeared across the paper. Rebecca assumed it was coffee or perhaps old ink. Curious by nature, she reached for her cell phone. It was nearly midnight, certainly too late to call anyone, but something about the mysterious number intrigued her. She told herself she would just see if it connected, then hang up before anyone answered. The line rang 3 times before someone picked up. Silence followed, then shallow breathing. "Hello," Rebecca said hesitantly. More silence, then a whisper so faint she had to press the phone harder against her ear. 132 Oakwood Drive, apartment 3B, her address, spoken in a voice she couldn't determine was male or female. The call disconnected. Rebecca sat motionless, her hand trembling slightly. How did the person know where she lived? She checked the number again, wondering if she had somehow called her own voicemail or some automated system. She dialed again. This time, no one answered. Sleep eluded her that night. Rebecca told herself there must be a logical explanation, but her mind kept returning to the smeared brownish stains on the receipt. The following morning, she called her friend Diane, who worked as a nurse at Millfield General Hospital. "You're being paranoid," Diane said after hearing the story, "but if it'll make you feel better, bring the receipt to me. We can test if it's blood." Rebecca felt foolish but delivered the receipt to Diane during her lunch break. 2 days later, Diane called back, her tone noticeably changed. "It's human blood, Becca, type AB negative, pretty rare. And it's not fresh, it's been on that paper for a while." The police showed minimal interest when Rebecca reported her findings. Detective Warren Mills took her statement, examining the receipt with gloved hands. "Ms. Morgan, old books exchange hands many times. This could be from a paper cut, a nosebleed. As for the phone call, it was likely a coincidence or a prank. Perhaps someone recognized your voice." But Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. She began researching Alina Sanderson, the previous owner of the book. The elderly woman had lived alone for decades, working as a librarian until retirement. Her obituary mentioned natural causes, heart failure at age 87. A week passed uneventfully. Rebecca had almost convinced herself that Detective Mills was right when she received a text message from the same number, "Check page 87. With trembling hands, she opened The Secret Garden to page 87. There, pressed between the pages, was a small Polaroid photograph showing an unfamiliar basement with what appeared to be a makeshift bed in the corner. Written on the white border in the same brownish substance, "Help me." This time, Detective Mills took her more seriously. The police traced the phone number to a prepaid cell purchased with cash at a convenience store in neighboring Bristol. Security footage from the store had been overwritten months ago. Rebecca couldn't bear to stay in her apartment. She moved in temporarily with Diane while the police investigated. They searched Alina Sanderson's home but found nothing suspicious. The basement in the photo didn't match Sanderson's or any property connected to her. 3 weeks into the investigation, Detective Mills arrived at Diane's home with a new development. They had identified the blood through DNA analysis. The blood belongs to Melissa Campbell, a 26-year-old woman reported missing in October 2016, the same month as the date on the receipt. Melissa had vanished after leaving her night shift at Harrison's Pharmacy. Her car was found in the parking lot, but security cameras had malfunctioned that evening. The case had gone cold after months without leads. The discovery prompted police to re-examine Alina Sanderson's life. The elderly woman had led a quiet existence, but neighbors recalled her nephew, James Sanderson, visiting occasionally. James had worked as a maintenance man for several apartment buildings in the area, including Rebecca's. When police attempted to locate James, they discovered he had left town immediately after his aunt's estate sale. His apartment in Bristol had been emptied, the rent paid through the end of the month. The investigation expanded. James had access to numerous properties through his maintenance job. Police began systematic searches of buildings where he had worked, focusing on basement areas. On May 29, 2018, officers found a hidden room in the basement of an abandoned factory where James had once been employed. The room matched the Polaroid image. Inside, they discovered evidence of long-term captivity, a mattress, chains bolted to the wall, and personal items belonging to not one, but 3 different missing women, including Melissa Campbell. James Sanderson had disappeared without a trace. His vehicle was eventually discovered at a long-term parking lot near Boston Logan International Airport, but no records indicated he had boarded any flights. His current whereabouts remain unknown. As for Rebecca, she never returned to her apartment. The book that had started it all was kept as evidence, and sometimes she wondered if she had inadvertently stumbled upon a message that Melissa Campbell had desperately hidden, hoping someone would find it. Most disturbing was the theory that Detective Mills reluctantly shared with her months later. We believe Alina Sanderson might have discovered what her nephew was doing. The timing of her death, officially ruled as heart failure, now seems suspicious. We're petitioning to have her body exhumed. Rebecca stopped visiting yard sales. Her book collection was donated to the local library, except for a few cherished volumes. She moved to another state, changed her phone number, and rarely spoke of what happened. But sometimes, late at night, her phone still rings once before disconnecting. When she checks the call log, no number appears, and occasionally she imagines she hears faint breathing on the line, as if someone is trying to tell her something, a secret written in blood, hidden between the pages of a forgotten story. To this day, James Sanderson remains on the FBI's most wanted list. Melissa Campbell's body was never found, and somewhere, perhaps, an old book holds another clue, waiting for someone curious enough to open its pages and brave enough to dial a number that should never be called. The blood-stained receipt and the Polaroid photograph remain in evidence storage at the Millfield Police Department, silent testaments to a mystery that continues to haunt everyone involved in the case. Detective Mills retired early last year, citing health reasons, but those close to him know he still keeps a copy of the case file at home, reviewing it on sleepless nights. Some secrets refuse to stay buried, no matter how many pages are turned. Crime 4, the ordinary sounds of suburban life filled Oakwood Lane that Wednesday morning. Children waited for school buses, commuters backed out of driveways, and somewhere down the street, a lawnmower hummed rhythmically. Nothing suggested that this day would permanently alter the fabric of life in this small Massachusetts community. Eliza Morgan had moved into number 37 just 8 weeks prior. A 34-year-old accountant with a preference for solitude, she'd chosen the modest 2-bedroom colonial for its quiet neighborhood and mature oak trees. The previous owners, an elderly couple relocating to Florida, had maintained the property meticulously, though the heating system needed updating before winter arrived. That's why Michael Denton was there, kneeling before the basement furnace with his toolbox splayed open beside him. Eliza had called about a persistent rattling sound whenever the heat cycled on. Nothing major, she'd insisted on the phone, just wanted it checked before the temperature dropped further. Probably just debris in the ductwork, Michael had told her. Happens all the time in these older homes. The morning light barely penetrated the basement's small windows as he worked, his flashlight beam dancing across the metal ductwork. Michael had been doing HVAC repairs for 15 years. He'd found all manner of things in vents and furnaces, forgotten toys, missing jewelry, abandoned nests, but never anything like what he discovered that day. The obstruction was lodged where the main duct bent toward the living room. Michael worked his inspection camera through the system, frowning at the image on his small screen. Something rubbery and flesh-colored blocked the passage. Using his extended grabbing tool, he carefully maneuvered it free and pulled it through the access panel. A face stared back at him, a rubber mask with an unnaturally wide smile frozen onto its features. The kind used in theater or Halloween costumes, but what caused Michael's breath to catch wasn't the mask itself, but what had been stuffed behind it. Photographs, dozens of them, each showing Eliza Morgan asleep in her bed. "I don't understand," Eliza whispered later, hands trembling as Detective Laura Simmons spread the photos across the kitchen table. "These are all from different nights. Look at the nightgowns, the positions." Detective Simmons nodded, her experienced eyes noting the subtle differences in each image. The photographs spanned what appeared to be Eliza's entire time in the house, from her first night, when she'd fallen asleep reading with her glasses still on, to just 3 nights ago, when she'd worn the Northwestern University t-shirt she'd purchased online the previous week. "Ms. Morgan, is there anyone who has had access to your home? Maintenance workers, friends, family members?" Eliza shook her head, color draining from her face. "No one has a key except me. I haven't even had guests for dinner yet. I've been so busy unpacking and settling in." Over the next several days, the investigation revealed troubling details. The security system installed by the previous owners had been subtly tampered with, the bedroom motion sensor disabled, but in a way that wouldn't trigger an error message. A barely perceptible gap had been created in the weather stripping of Eliza's bedroom window, allowing it to be opened from outside without triggering the contact alarm. Even more disturbing was what forensics discovered when they examined the mask. Trace evidence suggested it had been worn recently and repeatedly. The interior contained microscopic skin cells that didn't match Eliza's DNA profile. Someone had been entering her home while she slept, standing over her bed, taking photographs, wearing that grotesque, smiling mask. Detective Simmons expanded her investigation to include the previous homeowners, the elderly Hendersons. Their daughter, Rebecca, expressed shock when shown the photographs. "Mom and Dad lived here for 30 years without incident," she insisted. "This has to be something new, something to do with the house now." Background checks on everyone who had been to the house since Eliza moved in revealed nothing significant. The real estate agents, the movers, the cable installer, all came back clean. The investigation seemed to be hitting dead ends when Officer Peters discovered something unexpected while canvassing the neighborhood again. 3 houses down at number 43 lived Martin Walsh, a quiet man in his 50s who moved to the area just 4 months before Eliza. Neighbors described him as polite but private. He worked remotely as a software developer and kept largely to himself. What caught Officer Peters' attention wasn't Walsh himself, but what a teenage neighbor mentioned casually. Yeah, I see him taking walks at weird hours, really late sometimes. My bedroom faces the street, and I've seen him out there at like 2 or 3 in the morning, just walking up and down the block. When questioned, Walsh appeared genuinely confused. I suffer from insomnia, he explained. Walking helps. I didn't realize it would be cause for concern. There was nothing to connect Walsh to the disturbing photographs except his nocturnal habits and no legal grounds for a search warrant. The investigation stalled while Eliza, now staying with a cousin in Boston, refused to return to the house. The break came 3 weeks later from an unexpected source. Eliza had hired a company to pack her belongings. She decided to sell the house regardless of the financial loss. The moving crew was clearing out the basement storage when they discovered a small opening in the foundation wall, hidden behind old shelving units. Detective Simmons arrived to find what appeared to be a crawl space, one that wasn't on any of the house plans. Inside, they found a sleeping bag, empty water bottles, snack wrappers, and a small digital camera. Most disturbingly, there was a collection of items that could only be described as souvenirs. A hairbrush with strands of Eliza's distinctive auburn hair, a discarded shopping list in her handwriting, and an empty coffee mug she'd reported missing weeks ago. The DNA evidence from the crawl space matched what they'd found on the mask, but it didn't match Martin Walsh, who was quickly cleared. Instead, it pointed to someone whose DNA wasn't in any criminal database. The investigation expanded to include construction workers who had renovated the house over the years. The crawl space appeared to have been created during foundation work done approximately 5 years earlier. Records showed the contractor had employed 6 different workers during that project. 5 were quickly located and eliminated as suspects. The 6th, a man named Thomas Reeves, proved more difficult to track down. Employment records showed he had worked for the company for only 3 months. His personnel file contained discrepancies. The social security number belonged to someone who had died as an infant 20 years earlier. He was quiet, kept to himself, his former supervisor recalled. Good worker, though, showed up early, stayed late, seemed to take a special interest in that particular job now that I think about it. Police circulated the description and the few photographs they could find of Reeves, but he seemed to have vanished. The search expanded to neighboring states with no results. Meanwhile, a forensic analysis of the digital camera revealed more than just the photos of Eliza. There were hundreds of images of the house itself, taken over years, external shots at different times of day and seasons, suggesting long-term surveillance that predated both Eliza and the Hendersons' decision to sell. Some of the oldest photos showed a young family that had lived in the house before the Hendersons purchased it 15 years earlier. Detective Simmons tracked them down in Colorado. We never felt comfortable there, Sarah Linden, the former owner, admitted over the phone. There were always noises we couldn't explain. Things would go missing and then reappear in different places. My husband thought I was being forgetful, but I knew something wasn't right. The case remained open as months passed. Eliza sold the house at a loss to a real estate investor who renovated it extensively, removing the crawl space and modernizing the entire structure. The story faded from local headlines, becoming another unsolved mystery in the department's files. Then, almost a year to the day after the mask was discovered, a property manager in Vermont called the police about an abandoned cabin. The seasonal rental had been paid for in cash by a man matching Reeves' description, who had apparently left abruptly. Inside, investigators found wall after wall covered with photographs, not just of Eliza Morgan, but of other women, other houses. some dated back more than a decade. And there, sitting on a workbench, were 5 rubber masks, each with the same frozen smile, each representing a different face that Thomas Reeves had worn while watching strangers sleep in what they thought was the safety of their homes. To this day, Thomas Reeves remains at large. Eliza Morgan has changed her name and relocated to another state. The house on Oakwood Lane has new owners who know nothing of its history, and in quiet neighborhoods across New England, homeowners occasionally report strange sounds in their heating vents, sounds that furnace technicians can never quite seem to locate. Sometimes, late at night when the wind blows just right, residents of Oakwood Lane swear they can see a figure walking slowly down the street, pausing to look at the houses where people sleep, unaware they're being watched. But by the time anyone can get a clear look, the figure always disappears into the darkness between the streetlights, leaving nothing behind but a lingering sense of unease. The mask found inside the furnace now sits in an evidence locker, its smile a reminder that sometimes the monsters we fear are not supernatural beings, but the strangers who walk among us, the ones who have learned to hide in plain sight, in the shadows of ordinary life, watching and waiting with infinite patience. Crime 5. The autumn light filtered through the oak trees surrounding Alina Mercer's Victorian home in Oak Ridge, Missouri. The house had stood for over a century, its wooden floors whispering with the memories of generations. Alina, a 42-year-old child psychologist, had purchased the property 3 years earlier, drawn to its character and the quiet neighborhood where she could build her private practice. October 2019 marked the beginning of Alina's work with 5-year-old Caleb Wilson. The boy had been referred to her after displaying what his kindergarten teacher called concerning behavioral changes following his parents' divorce. Withdrawn and rarely speaking, Caleb had developed a habit of drawing intricate, detailed drawings that seemed beyond the capability of a child his age. During their second session together, Alina placed a fresh sheet of paper and a box of crayons before Caleb. "Draw anything you'd like today," she told him with a gentle smile. The child's small fingers hovered over the crayons before selecting a brown one. Without hesitation, he began to draw. An hour later, Alina found herself staring at the paper in disbelief. Caleb had drawn a detailed floor plan of her house, the Victorian home where they were having their sessions. The living room with its bay window, the kitchen with the island counter, her office with the desk positioned exactly where it stood, and even the staircase with its peculiar bend halfway up. "Caleb," she asked, her voice steady despite her racing thoughts, "have you been in my house before today?" The boy shook his head without looking up. "Did someone show you pictures of my house?" Another silent head shake. Alina's colleague, Dr. Maria Santos, had been the only therapist to see the interior of her home, and she had never brought her own children with her. Alina examined the drawing again, noting how Caleb had even included the antique chest at the foot of her bed upstairs, a room he had never entered. "This is amazing work, Caleb," she said, careful to keep her voice neutral. "Can you tell me about your drawing?" The boy pointed to various rooms, naming them correctly. When his small finger reached the basement, he added a feature that made Alina's skin prickle, a door on the far wall, a door that didn't exist. "And what's this?" she asked. "The hidden door," Caleb whispered, the first words he'd spoken that day, "to the secret room where the sad lady is." That night Alina couldn't sleep. The drawing sat on her kitchen table, Caleb's words echoing in her mind. At 2:17 a.m., she took a flashlight and descended the wooden steps to her basement. The space was largely unfinished, used mainly for storage. She moved boxes and old furniture, examining the concrete walls with methodical precision. On the far wall, behind a tall bookshelf filled with college textbooks, she noticed something odd, a slight difference in the texture of the wall. Heart-pounding, Alina moved the bookshelf aside. The concrete appeared seamless, but when she ran her fingers along it, she felt a slight depression. Pressing harder, she felt something give way. A section of the wall, disguised to match the surrounding concrete, moved inward. A door hidden by expert craftsmanship. Alina stood frozen, the beam of her flashlight illuminating a small space beyond, no larger than a walk-in closet. The air that escaped was stale, untouched for years. Inside, the walls were covered with faded floral wallpaper. A rocking chair sat in the corner. On the floor lay a small cloth doll, its fabric faded and worn. Detective Marcus Holloway arrived at Alina's home the following morning. In his 23 years with the Oak Ridge Police Department, he had developed a reputation for handling unusual cases with both skepticism and an open mind. "So you're telling me a 5-year-old patient drew a floor plan of your house, including a hidden room you didn't know existed?" Holloway asked, his weathered face betraying nothing as he examined the drawing. "I know how it sounds," Alina replied, "but I've documented everything, and the room is real. I'll show you." The detective followed her to the basement, where the hidden door now stood partially open. Forensic technicians were already setting up equipment, treating the space as a potential crime scene. The house was built in 1897 by Thomas Blackwood, Alina explained. "I've researched its history, but nothing unusual came up. The previous owners were a retired couple who lived here for 30 years before moving to Florida." Detective Holloway knelt by the entrance to the hidden room. This door was designed to blend in perfectly. Someone went to great lengths to conceal this space. He stood up slowly. "And you say the boy mentioned a sad lady?" Alina nodded. Those were his exact words. The investigation revealed that the hidden room had been sealed off sometime in the 1960s, based on the materials used. The doll found inside was manufactured between 1955 and 1962. Most significantly, forensic analysis detected traces of blood on the floorboards beneath the worn carpet, blood that had been there for decades. Records showed that in March 1961, a 23-year-old woman named Lillian Parker had disappeared from Oak Ridge. She had been working as a housekeeper for the Harriman family, who owned the Victorian house at that time. The case had gone cold after initial investigations found no leads. Alina canceled her appointments for the week, consumed by the mystery unfolding in her home. She reached out to Caleb's parents, hoping to understand if there was any connection between their son and the house's history. "He's always been sensitive," Caleb's mother, Sarah, explained during their call. "Sometimes he knows things he shouldn't know. My grandmother was the same way." Meanwhile, Detective Holloway tracked down Edward Harriman, now in his 80s and living in a nursing home 2 counties over. The elderly man had been 17 when Lillian disappeared. "I remember Lillian," Edward told the detective, his roomy eyes distant with memory. "Pretty girl, quiet. My father hired her after my mother died." He paused, his weathered hands trembling slightly. "There was something about the way my father looked at her, something that made me uncomfortable." 3 days after the discovery of the hidden room, forensic technicians confirmed that the blood matched Lillian Parker's DNA profile, created from samples provided by her surviving nephew. Ground-penetrating radar revealed no human remains in the basement or surrounding property, leaving the ultimate fate of Lillian Parker still unknown. Alina arranged a carefully supervised session with Caleb, attended by both his parents and a child welfare specialist. When asked about the drawing, Caleb seemed confused, as if he couldn't remember creating it. "Sometimes I see pictures in my head," he finally said, his voice small in the quiet room. "Pictures of places and people I don't know." The case remained open, with Margaret Harriman, Edward's mother, now the primary suspect in whatever had happened to Lillian Parker. Historical records revealed that Margaret had not died, as Edward had claimed, but had been committed to a psychiatric institution in 1962, where she remained until her death in 1975. The psychiatric records, when obtained by court order, described Margaret as suffering from acute paranoia and violent tendencies. 1 year later, Alina still lived in the Victorian house. The hidden room had been properly opened and renovated, transformed into a small library. She kept Caleb's drawing framed on her desk, a reminder of mysteries that logic couldn't always explain. Caleb continued his therapy, gradually emerging from his shell. He drew countless pictures, but never again with the uncanny accuracy of that October day. Sometimes, Alina would catch him staring at empty corners of rooms, as if seeing something or someone that others couldn't perceive. In the quiet nights of Oak Ridge, when the old house settled and creaked, Alina sometimes thought she heard the faint sound of a rocking chair moving gently back and forth in the space that once was hidden. And occasionally, passing Caleb's latest drawing on her desk, she would notice a figure in the background, a woman with a sad smile, watching from a distance. The case of Lillian Parker remains officially unsolved in the records of the Oak Ridge Police Department. Detective Holloway retired the following spring, the mystery becoming one of many that would linger in his thoughts during quiet moments. And in the small town of Oak Ridge, Missouri, the story of the boy who knew too much and the house that kept its secrets became something between a legend and a whisper, a reminder that some truths emerge in the most unexpected ways, through the innocent hands of a child who drew what shouldn't have been possible to know. Crime 6, she always thought the bookcase was bolted to the wall. One day it shifted just slightly, and behind it, a narrow wooden door with a handle rusted from the inside. Written above in faded black paint, "Private, do not feed." Laura Jenkins had lived in the old Victorian house at 342 Maple Street in the quiet town of Riverdale, Massachusetts, for nearly 7 years. She'd moved there after her divorce, searching for a place where she could start over, where the streets were safe and neighbors waved from their porches. The 3-bedroom home, built in 1912, had character, creaking floorboards, crown molding, and built-in bookcases that lined the wall of what she used as her home office. Laura was 34, worked remotely as a graphic designer, and kept to herself. Her neighbors described her as polite but private. She would walk her border collie, Max, every morning at 6:15 and again at sunset. Her routine rarely changed. She ordered groceries online, had packages delivered to her porch, and occasionally drove to visit her sister in Boston, 40 minutes away. In late October of 2023, Laura began renovating her home office. The space needed updating. The old wooden desk was too small for her dual monitors, and the lighting was poor during winter months. While measuring the wall for new shelving, she bumped against the built-in bookcase, and it shifted just half an inch, but enough to reveal a thin line of darkness behind it. At first, she thought nothing of it. Old houses settle, but something about that sliver of darkness drew her attention. She removed the books from the shelves, set them in careful stacks on the floor, and pushed against the bookcase. It resisted at first, then yielded with a scraping sound. The heavy oak structure wasn't bolted to the wall at all, but mounted on hidden hinges. Behind it was a narrow wooden door, painted the same eggshell white as the surrounding wall. The paint was cracked and peeling around a rusted metal handle. Above the door, in faded black paint, someone had written the words, "Private, do not feed." Laura took several photos with her phone. She sent them to her sister, Rachel, with the message, "Found something weird in the house. Should I open it?" Rachel replied immediately, "OMG, yes, secret room. Be careful, though." Laura tried the handle. It didn't budge. She examined the door more closely and found a small keyhole beneath the handle. No key, of course. She would need to force it open somehow. By evening, curiosity had gotten the better of her. She drove to the hardware store and purchased a small pry bar. Back home, she wedged the metal tool into the gap between the door and frame and with steady pressure forced the lock. The door cracked open with a sound like dry bones breaking. The space beyond was dark and smelled of mildew and something else, something sharper and more disturbing. Laura used the flashlight on her phone to illuminate a narrow staircase leading down. She hesitantly took one step, then another. The stairs creaked under her weight. At the bottom was a small room, perhaps 8 feet by 10. The walls were covered in dark wooden paneling. There was no furniture except for a metal folding chair in one corner. But what caught Laura's attention, what made her breath catch in her throat, were the photographs. Hundreds of Polaroid pictures were pinned to the walls. They showed the house, her house, from different angles. The kitchen window at night, the back door, the garden. Some showed the previous owners, a family named Briscoe who had sold Laura the house. But most disturbing were the dozens of photos of Laura herself. Laura walking Max, Laura bringing in groceries, Laura sitting at her desk by the window working on her computer. The photos spanned years, including the entire time she had lived there. The most recent seemed to be from just a week ago. Laura backed up the stairs, her heart hammering in her chest. Once in her office, she slammed the hidden door shut and pushed the bookcase back into place. With trembling hands, she called the police. Detective Marcus Reeves arrived 40 minutes later. He was in his late 40s, with salt and pepper hair and tired eyes that had seen too much. He listened carefully as Laura explained what she'd found. "How long have you lived here?" he asked, examining the bookcase. "Almost 7 years," Laura replied. "And you never noticed this before?" "Never. I thought it was attached to the wall." Detective Reeves helped Laura move the bookcase again. He examined the door, then the staircase and room below. When he emerged, his expression was grave. "Miss Jenkins, I think you should pack a bag and stay somewhere else tonight. We need to process this as a crime scene." Within hours, the quiet house on Maple Street was surrounded by police cars, their lights casting red and blue shadows across the neighborhood. Forensic technicians photographed and cataloged each Polaroid. They dusted for fingerprints and collected fibers. Neighbors gathered on the sidewalk, whispering among themselves. One neighbor, Mrs. Alina Prentice, who had lived across the street for over 30 years, approached Detective Reeves as he stood on the porch. "I should have said something," she murmured, wringing her hands. "I've seen someone you know at night, just standing in the yard sometimes. I thought it was just kids." The investigation revealed that the house had been owned by the Briscoe family for 12 years before Laura. Before that, it had belonged to an elderly man named Walter Gaines, who had lived there alone for nearly 40 years until his death in 2004. Further research into Walter Gaines uncovered disturbing details. He had worked as a janitor at the local high school until 1987, when he was let go after several female students reported feeling uncomfortable around him. No charges were ever filed. He withdrew from community life after that, rarely leaving his house except for necessities. The photographs in the hidden room dated back to the early 1990s. The oldest showed the Millers, who had lived in the house next door until 2001. Later photos documented the Briscoe family in intimate detail: bedrooms, bathrooms, children playing. Most concerning was what police found beneath the floorboards of the hidden room: a journal meticulously kept. It contained entries dating back to 1988, describing in clinical detail the habits, conversations, and private moments of everyone who had lived in or near the house. The final entry was dated just 3 days before Laura discovered the door. It read simply, "She's getting too close. I may have to move again." Fingerprint analysis of the Polaroids and journal revealed matches to a man named Edward Gaines, Walter Gaines' son. According to records, Edward had been institutionalized as a teenager in the 1970s after exhibiting what doctors then called voyeuristic tendencies with antisocial features. He was released in 1986 and supposedly moved to Oregon. There was no record of him after 1991. Detective Reeves theorized that Edward had never left. Instead, he had moved into the hidden room when his father was still alive and remained there even as the house changed hands over the decades. The words "private, do not feed" suddenly took on a chilling new meaning. A thorough search of the crawl spaces, attic, and outbuildings revealed no sign of Edward Gaines. However, they did find evidence that someone had been accessing the house through a forgotten cellar door that connected to the storm drain system. This explained how he could come and go undetected. Laura never returned to live in the house. She stayed with her sister for 2 months, then moved to a modern apartment building with security cameras and a doorman. She sold the Victorian house at a loss, with full disclosure of its disturbing history. The new owners gutted the space, removing the hidden room entirely and reconfiguring the floor plan. They claimed they weren't superstitious, but they did install a state-of-the-art security system. Edward Gaines was never found. Police in 3 states issued alerts with his description, but years had passed since his last known photograph. He would be in his 60s now, possibly living under an assumed name. Sometimes on sleepless nights, Laura wonders about the years she spent in that house, unknowingly sharing it with someone watching from behind the walls. She thinks about the countless moments she believed she was alone, changing clothes, sleeping, crying, while unseen eyes observed and recorded her most private moments. Detective Reeves still drives by the old Victorian occasionally. He watches the new family living their lives in the renovated space, children playing in the yard, lights in the windows, normal domestic scenes. He wonders, too, about Edward Gaines. Not where he is now, but how many other houses might have secret rooms, hidden doors, and words painted in fading black: "Private, do not feed." In Riverdale, people now check behind their bookcases and listen more carefully to the sounds their houses make at night. They notice when things are slightly out of place or when a floorboard creaks without explanation. And they wonder who might be watching from the spaces in between, the forgotten passages and hidden rooms where some secrets never fully disappear. The case remains open, filed under person of interest, whereabouts unknown. But in a drawer in his desk, Detective Reeves keeps a Polaroid that was found in the hidden room. It shows Laura Jenkins sleeping in her bed, the date stamp indicating it was taken just one day before she discovered the door. On the back, written in neat, precise handwriting, "They never look behind the things they think are permanent." Crime 7, she didn't own it, but there it was, a pale blue dress hanging from a beam, still swaying slightly. The fabric was stained. The hem torn and pinned to the collar was a note, "You left without saying goodbye." Sarah Mitchell stood frozen in the doorway of the attic. Her flashlight beam caught dust particles dancing in the air, illuminating what shouldn't have been there. The house on Oakwood Lane had been empty for 3 months since her sister Rebecca's disappearance. Today was supposed to be about collecting the last of Rebecca's belongings before the property went up for sale. Not finding this. Rebecca Mitchell had grown up in Pineville, Connecticut, a town where everyone knew their neighbors and doors remained unlocked at night. At 32, she'd built a quiet life as a local librarian, known for her reading programs for children and her collection of vintage dresses. She lived alone in their childhood home after their parents moved to Florida 5 years earlier. On February 17, 2023, Rebecca didn't show up for her Friday shift at the library. Her car remained in the driveway. Her phone was found on her nightstand, still plugged in. A half-empty cup of chamomile tea sat on her kitchen counter, a thin film of mold now growing across its surface. The front door was locked from the inside. The back door stood slightly ajar. Detective James Morrill had led the investigation. "Sometimes people just walk away from their lives," he told Sarah during their third interview. "We see it more often than you'd think." But Sarah knew better. Rebecca wouldn't leave without her medication, without her grandmother's locket, without saying goodbye. The sisters spoke every Sunday without fail. Rebecca had plans for a garden renovation that spring. She just ordered new bookshelves. People who plan futures don't vanish into thin air. The initial search extended through the woods behind Rebecca's property. Volunteers from town formed search parties. Dogs followed scent trails that ended abruptly at the main road. Security cameras from the gas station half a mile away showed no sign of Rebecca walking past that night. The local news ran the story for 2 weeks before moving on to other tragedies. Life in Pineville returned to normal, except for Sarah. Sarah had temporarily moved into Rebecca's house during the investigation, taking leave from her job in Boston. She slept in the guest room, unable to enter her sister's bedroom for more than a few necessary minutes. She walked the same paths Rebecca would have walked. She spoke to everyone Rebecca knew. There was Michael Grantham, Rebecca's ex-boyfriend from 3 years ago. They dated for almost 2 years before separating amicably, or so it seemed. He now worked at the hardware store and had an alibi for the night of Rebecca's disappearance. Poker night with friends, confirmed by 4 separate witnesses. There was Eleanor Webb, Rebecca's closest friend and fellow librarian. Eleanor had been the one to call police when Rebecca didn't show up for work. Her concern seemed genuine, her grief palpable. Yet Sarah noticed how Eleanor would sometimes touch Rebecca's things with a strange possessiveness. There was newcomer Thomas Hayes, who had moved to town 6 months before and rented the cottage across the street. Few people knew him well. He kept to himself, worked remotely as a graphic designer. Detective Morrill had interviewed him twice. Hayes claimed he hadn't seen anything unusual the night Rebecca disappeared, though he mentioned hearing a car with a loud muffler around 11 p.m. As weeks passed, Sarah felt herself becoming a ghost in her sister's life. She watered plants that were already dying. She collected mail addressed to someone who might never read it. She found herself standing in rooms, staring at walls, wondering which objects might hold answers if only they could speak. The case had gone cold. Detective Morrell's calls became less frequent, his updates more perfunctory. 3 months after Rebecca's disappearance, Sarah had made the painful decision to pack up the house, which led her to the attic on this gray April afternoon and to the dress she now stared at. Rebecca's collection of vintage dresses was meticulously maintained, each one hung in garment bags in her bedroom closet. Sarah had already catalogued them all. This dress, this stained, torn, pale blue dress, was not part of that collection, and Rebecca would never have stored anything in the attic, which she avoided due to her fear of spiders. Someone had been in the house recently. Sarah's hand trembled as she approached the dress. The beam from her flashlight revealed dark brown stains across the fabric, older at the edges, fresher near the center. The note pinned to the collar fluttered slightly in the draft from the attic window. "You left without saying goodbye." Sarah backed away, fumbling for her phone. Detective Morrell answered on the fourth ring. "I need you to come to Rebecca's house right now," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone's been here." The police arrived 20 minutes later. They photographed the dress, bagged it for evidence. The stains were confirmed to be blood, though lab results would take days. The handwriting on the note didn't match samples of Rebecca's writing from her journals and letters. The locks showed no signs of forced entry. Whoever had placed the dress in the attic either had a key or knew another way into the house. 3 days later, Detective Morrell appeared at Sarah's temporary apartment with a grim expression. "The blood on the dress is Rebecca's type," he said, "and we found something else. Fibers from the dress match fibers we found in Thomas Hayes' car trunk during our initial investigation. We didn't have the dress to compare them to then." Thomas Hayes was brought in for questioning. His cottage stood empty when police arrived, drawers left open, computer gone. He had disappeared overnight. A search of Hayes' financial records revealed a disturbing pattern. He had lived in 5 different small towns over the past decade. In 3 of those locations, women had gone missing, cases unsolved, investigations abandoned. None of these connections had appeared during the initial background check, as Hayes had used different names in each location. What emerged was a portrait of obsession. Hayes would move to a town, establish himself quietly, and select a woman who lived alone. Police found journals in a hidden compartment beneath his floorboards, detailing his observations of these women. Rebecca's name filled dozens of pages. "She doesn't know I watch her water the garden every evening. Her bedroom light stays on until 11:17 p.m. usually. She never locks the back door when she brings groceries in." The final entry dated February 16th, tomorrow. 2 weeks after the discovery of the dress, hikers found a makeshift grave in the state forest, 30 miles from Pineville. The remains were identified as Rebecca's through dental records. She had been buried in a simple white nightgown, not the blue dress that had hung in her attic. The blue dress, investigators discovered, belonged to Melissa Carmichael, who had disappeared from a town in Oregon 4 years earlier. Her case remained unsolved. Thomas Hayes, or whatever his real name might be, had taken the dress as a trophy, and he had returned to place it in Rebecca's home after her death, a ritual whose meaning only he understood. Detective Morrell called it closure when they found Rebecca. Sarah knew better. There's no closure for those left behind, only an endless series of questions that haunt the spaces between sleep and waking. Why Rebecca? Why bring back the dress? Where was Hayes now? Who would be next? 6 months after Rebecca's funeral, Sarah received a postcard with no return address. On the front was a picture of a small coastal town she didn't recognize. On the back, in neat handwriting that sent ice through her veins, she didn't say goodbye either. Sarah moved from Boston the following week. She changed her name, her hair color, her habits. She installed security systems that neighbors called paranoid. She kept a baseball bat beside her bed. Because she knew something the police reports didn't capture, Thomas Hayes wasn't finished. The blue dress was a message, not just to her, but to whoever would be watching his next selection when they watered their garden or brought in groceries through an unlocked door. Some predators don't stop until they're caught. Some never are. And sometimes in attics across America, dresses hang from beams, waiting to be found, stained with memories of those who left without saying goodbye. They say the most disturbing true crime cases aren't those with the highest body counts, but those that remind us how easily a life can be erased. How someone can be studying at their kitchen table one moment and gone the next. How the person who takes them might be watching from across the street, planning, waiting, collecting dresses that don't belong to them. Rebecca Mitchell's case remains officially solved, but with no conviction. Thomas Hayes was never found. The blue dress hangs in an evidence locker, its secrets preserved under plastic, its stains darkening with time. And somewhere, perhaps, another dress awaits its turn to deliver a message to someone who will stand frozen in a doorway, wondering how something so ordinary could become a herald of such unimaginable loss. Crime 8, at first it sounded like water hammer, but at night it changed, soft weeping, followed by a muffled scream echoing up through the bathroom sink. A plumber found nothing in the system except a single baby shoe lodged deep inside the main drain. Marion Holt moved into the Cascade Apartments in late autumn of 2017. The building sat on the edge of Pinewood, a small town in western Oregon where rain clouds perpetually gathered against distant mountains. The 3-story red brick structure dated back to the 1940s, with its squeaking wooden floors and radiators that hissed through the night. For Marion, a 34-year-old librarian seeking solitude after her divorce, Apartment 2B offered an affordable fresh start. Her neighbors were mostly quiet, the elderly couple across the hall who nodded politely but rarely spoke, the young man upstairs who left for work before dawn, and the vacant apartment 2A next to hers, which the landlord said had been empty for nearly 8 months. The first 3 weeks passed uneventfully. Marion established her routines, morning coffee by the window overlooking the courtyard's dying garden, evenings with books under the soft yellow glow of her reading lamp. The building settled into her consciousness, its peculiar sounds becoming familiar, the creak of the stairwell at 5 each evening, the distant hum of the boiler room, the occasional groan of old pipes. It was on a Tuesday night in December when Marion first heard something different. She had been drifting toward sleep when a distant metallic knock pulled her back to consciousness. 3 distinct taps echoing through the walls. She dismissed it as the heating system adjusting to the winter chill that had descended on Pinewood that week. But the following night it happened again. This time Marion was brushing her teeth when she heard it not just knocking, but what sounded like a voice, distant and muffled, rising from the bathroom sink drain. She stood frozen, toothbrush suspended, listening. It lasted perhaps 5 seconds, a sound like weeping, followed by what she would later describe to Detective Warren as the saddest sigh I've ever heard. By the third night, curiosity overcame unease. Marion pressed her ear against the bathroom wall, tracing the sounds to the pipes that ran between her apartment and vacant 2A next door. The noise had evolved, now resembling a human voice speaking words she couldn't quite discern. Sometimes it sounded like a woman, sometimes like a child. December 12th marked a turning point. At 2:13 a.m., Marion woke to a scream, high-pitched and unmistakable, seemingly emerging from her bathroom sink. She called the building's superintendent, Michael Gaines, the next morning. "Pipes make all kinds of sounds," Gaines told her, standing in her bathroom and knocking on the wall. "This building's got history in its bones. You're probably just hearing water hammer or air in the system." Nevertheless, he promised to send a plumber. Vernon Tucker arrived 2 days later, a heavy-set man with 40 years of experience who had serviced the building since the 1990s. He inspected the bathroom, unscrewed the U-bend beneath the sink, and found nothing unusual. But when Marion insisted on a more thorough check, he reluctantly agreed to access the main drainage pipe that ran down from the upper floors. "Been plumbing in this county since before you were born," Tucker told her as he worked. "Heard all kinds of stories about noises in pipes, usually just air pockets or water pressure. Nothing supernatural about it." The word supernatural caught Marion off guard. She hadn't suggested anything of the sort. But as Tucker removed a section of pipe in the basement access point that connected to her bathroom stack, his expression changed. Using a small flashlight and a retrieval tool, he extracted something that shouldn't have been there. A tiny white leather shoe, sized for an infant, stained dark with age and moisture. "This could have caused your noise," Tucker said, his voice noticeably quieter, "restricting water flow, creating air pockets." But the way he quickly wrapped the shoe in a rag and avoided meeting her eyes suggested he believed something else entirely. The discovery prompted Marion to research her building's history. At the library where she worked, she accessed local newspaper archives dating back decades. The Cascade Apartments had been unremarkable for most of its existence, housing generations of working-class families and individuals. But in 1973, the building briefly appeared in headlines when a young woman named Elena Vance and her 6-month-old daughter disappeared from apartment 2A, the vacant unit next to Marion's. According to the yellowed news clippings, 22-year-old Elena had moved to Pinewood from Seattle, telling neighbors she was escaping an abusive relationship. She kept to herself, rarely allowing visitors, protective of her infant daughter Lily. On March 15, 1973, a neighbor reported hearing an argument from Elena's apartment, followed by a scream. When police investigated, they found the apartment empty, Elena and Lily gone, along with their personal belongings. The case grew cold quickly. Most assumed Elena had simply fled again, perhaps fearing her former partner had found her. The investigation noted no signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play, just a young mother and her child who vanished into the night. As January arrived, the sounds from Marion's pipes continued, now occurring almost nightly. She began recording them on her phone, capturing what sounded distinctly like a woman's voice whispering, "Find her," sometimes followed by crying that raised goosebumps on her arms. Marion contacted Detective Lawrence Warren from the Pinewood Police Department, a skeptical man nearing retirement who nonetheless agreed to listen to her recordings. In his 30 years on the force, Warren had never heard the story of Elena and Lily Vance. The case predated his time, forgotten in the department's transition to digital records. Missing persons cases from the 70s rarely get solved, he told Marion over coffee at the local diner, but I'll see what I can dig up. Warren's search through stored evidence boxes in the station's basement yielded a surprising discovery. The original missing persons report included a detail omitted from news accounts. When officers first entered Aliner's apartment in 1973, they found the bathroom sink running, the drain partially dismantled, and water pooling on the floor. At Marion's insistence, Warren obtained permission to inspect apartment 2A. The vacant unit remained furnished with outdated decor, floral wallpaper peeling at the corners, heavy curtains gathering dust, a kitchenette with avocado-colored appliances preserved like a time capsule from decades past. The bathroom revealed patches of newer plumbing against older pipes. The landlord says they've had persistent plumbing issues in this unit, Warren explained, shining his flashlight along the wall connecting to Marion's apartment. No one stays longer than a few months, complain about the noise. In late January, Warren brought in a forensic team to examine the baby shoe. Despite its years in the pipe, they recovered partial fingerprints and traces of DNA. Cross-referenced against missing persons databases, the results connected the shoe to Lily Vance. The investigation accelerated. Ground-penetrating radar scanned the building's foundation and surrounding soil. Building records revealed renovations to the plumbing system in 1974, less than a year after Aliner's disappearance, work commissioned by the building's previous owner, Raymond Kaler, who died in 1986. When the police excavated sections of the basement, they discovered a sealed chamber behind a false wall, a space not shown on any building plans. Inside lay the remains of a young woman and an infant, wrapped in plastic and concealed within the masonry. Dental records confirmed the woman as Aliner Vance. Evidence suggested she had been strangled. The infant appeared to have died from exposure or neglect after her mother's murder. The investigation revealed that Raymond Kaler, the former building owner, had a history of complaints from female tenants about unwanted advances and inappropriate behavior. Police theorized that Kaler had made advances toward Aliner, and when rejected, the confrontation turned violent. In panic after killing her, he silenced the crying baby too, then concealed their bodies within his own building. For 45 years, Aliner and Lily remained entombed within the walls that witnessed their final moments, until the pipes that ran through that hidden space began to speak. At the memorial service held in the Pinewood Cemetery, Marion stood among the small gathering of town residents who came to witness Aliner and Lily finally receiving a proper burial. Detective Warren, now investigating other cold cases with renewed purpose, placed a small wreath beside their shared headstone. The sounds in Marion's pipes ceased after the bodies were removed and properly laid to rest. But sometimes, in the quiet hours between midnight and dawn, she finds herself awakening, not to screams or weeping, but to a peculiar silence that feels like someone finally at peace. As for apartment 2A, it remains vacant. The landlord has since renovated the entire building, replacing all the old plumbing. Yet no tenant stays longer than a month or two. They all report the same thing. At night, the soft sound of a lullaby seems to drift through the walls, followed by a gentle shushing, as if someone is finally putting a child to sleep. Crime 9, she painted the hallway white, but the next morning a single word had bled through the fresh coat, her last name. The handwriting was unfamiliar, and faint fingerprints trailed off down the wall, leading toward the basement door, now slightly ajar. Emma Winters had always been meticulous about her home. Friends often joked that her 1920s colonial in the quiet suburb of Millfield, Connecticut, was like stepping into a furniture catalog. Not a throw pillow out of place, not a speck of dust on the hardwood floors. The 32-year-old graphic designer lived alone after her divorce 3 years ago, and she'd made the historic house entirely her own. The hallway renovation was the final touch in her post-divorce transformation of the space. For 3 years, she'd lived with the previous owner's dark green paint, a shade that always felt oppressive, especially during the long New England winters. When April finally arrived in 2023, Emma decided it was time for a change. On Saturday, April 8th, Emma woke early, covered the hardwood floors with drop cloths, and carefully taped off the baseboards. By late afternoon, she had applied 2 coats of cloud white paint to the hallway walls. The transformation was everything she'd hoped for: bright, clean, and refreshing. Emma felt a sense of completion as she cleaned her brushes in the kitchen sink. The house was finally, truly hers. That night, Emma slept deeply, exhausted from the physical labor of painting. Around 3 a.m., she woke suddenly, unsure what had disturbed her sleep. She thought she heard footsteps on the stairs, but after listening intently for several minutes, she convinced herself it was just the old house settling. She drifted back to sleep. The next morning, Sunday, April 9th, Emma walked downstairs to make coffee. As she passed through the freshly painted hallway, she stopped abruptly. There, at eye level on the wall opposite the basement door, something dark had bled through the pristine white paint. As she moved closer, her stomach dropped. It was a single word, written in what looked like black marker: Winters. Her last name. The letters were about 6 inches tall, written in an angular script she didn't recognize. Despite the fresh coats of paint covering it, the word was clearly visible, as if it had somehow seeped through overnight. Even more disturbing were the faint, dark smudges that trailed from the last letter down toward the floor, like someone had dragged their fingers through wet ink. These smudges led directly to the basement door, which Emma distinctly remembered closing before going to bed. Now it stood slightly ajar. Emma stood frozen in the hallway, coffee forgotten. She lived alone. No one had been in her house. The previous owners had been an elderly couple named Martinez who had moved to Florida. The name Winters should not have been written anywhere in this house, let alone beneath layers of fresh paint. After several minutes of standing perfectly still, listening to the silence of the house, Emma forced herself to approach the basement door. With trembling fingers, she pushed it fully open and flipped on the light switch. The bare bulb illuminated the wooden stairs leading down to her largely unused basement. Nothing seemed disturbed. The washing machine, dryer, and storage boxes sat exactly as they always had. Emma closed the door firmly and called her closest friend, Diane. "This isn't something that just happens," Diane said after rushing over and examining the wall herself. "Someone must have been in your house." They called the police, who arrived 40 minutes later. Officer James Reeves and his partner took photos of the wall and the fingerprint smudges. They searched the house thoroughly but found no signs of forced entry or disturbance. The basement was clean. All windows were locked from the inside. The front and back doors showed no evidence of tampering. "Have you had any strange encounters lately?" Officer Reeves asked Emma. "Anyone who might want to frighten you?" Emma shook her head but then hesitated. "Well, there was one thing. Last week at the coffee shop downtown, a man I didn't recognize kept staring at me. When I left, I noticed he followed me out and watched which direction I went. But that happens sometimes, you know. I didn't think much of it." The officers took notes and promised to drive by her house frequently over the next few days. They suggested she stay with a friend, but Emma refused. This was her home. She wouldn't be scared away. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She sat in her living room with all the lights on, jumping at every creak and groan of the old house. Around 2 a.m., she finally dozed off on the couch, only to wake an hour later to a distinct thump from the basement. Heart pounding, Emma called 911. Officers Reeves and a different partner arrived within minutes, but again found nothing disturbed in the basement. They did, however, notice something Emma had missed in her panic the previous day. A small door, about 2 feet square, set into the far wall of the basement behind some storage boxes. "It's probably just an access door for utilities," Officer Reeves said, but his voice held a note of uncertainty. The small door was secured with a padlock that looked significantly newer than the rest of the basement fixtures. "I've never noticed that before," Emma said. "I don't have a key for that padlock." The officers broke the lock and carefully opened the small door. Behind it was a narrow crawl space that extended beyond the beam of their flashlights. The space smelled of damp earth and something else, something unpleasant that made Emma's stomach turn. Officer Reeves volunteered to investigate. He squeezed through the opening and disappeared into the darkness with only his flashlight and service weapon. Minutes passed in tense silence. When he finally emerged, his face was pale beneath his professional composure. "Ms. Winters, we're going to need to call in some specialists," he said quietly. "There appears to be evidence of someone having lived in that space recently." The revelation sent ice through Emma's veins. Someone had been living inside her walls while she slept just above. The police investigation that followed revealed a disturbing truth about Emma's beloved colonial home. The crawl space connected to a small room that had been created between the walls during a renovation decades ago. Inside this room, investigators found a sleeping bag, food wrappers, water bottles, and a notebook filled with observations about Emma's daily routine. Most chilling of all was a newspaper clipping about her divorce 3 years earlier, with her name circled repeatedly in black marker. The handwriting matched the word that had bled through her hallway paint. Forensic analysis determined that the intruder had been entering and exiting the house through a carefully concealed trapdoor that led from the crawl space to the backyard, hidden beneath Emma's garden shed. The previous owners, the Martinezes, claimed no knowledge of the hidden room or access point when questioned by police. For 2 weeks, police staked out Emma's house while she stayed with Diane. On April 23rd, their patience was rewarded when a man was spotted emerging from beneath the garden shed in the early morning hours. He was apprehended without incident. The intruder was identified as Thomas Lark, a 45-year-old former patient of Emma's ex-husband, who had been a psychiatrist at Millfield General Hospital. Dr. Winters had treated Lark for delusional disorder before determining he needed more intensive care than he could provide. According to police, Lark had developed an obsession with the Winters family, believing they held some mystical significance in his life. After Emma and her husband divorced, Lark had tracked her to her new home. Property records show he had purchased the house directly across the street just 1 month after Emma moved in. For nearly 3 years he had watched her, learned her routines, and eventually discovered the hidden access to her house. The night before Emma painted the hallway, Lark had written her name on the wall as some kind of ritual. When she covered it with paint, he returned while she slept to trace the letters again, pressing hard enough to make them visible through the fresh paint. Why he did this, why he chose that moment to reveal his presence after years of secret observation, remains unclear. Lark has refused to explain his actions or motives to investigators. Emma Winters never returned to the colonial house in Millfield. She sold it at a significant loss and moved out of state. The hidden room was sealed permanently during renovations by the new owners, who were fully informed of the property's disturbing history. To this day, Emma sleeps with the lights on. She installed an elaborate security system in her new apartment and rarely stays home alone. Sometimes she wakes in the night, she hears footsteps in her hallway or breathing in the walls. In those moments she sees it again, her name bleeding through fresh white paint, with those dark fingerprints trailing down toward a door that should have remained closed. And she wonders how long he watched her before deciding to write her name on the wall. Story 10. Renovations always have a way of stirring up the past, revealing hidden treasures and long-forgotten secrets. When Sarah and Michael embarked on renovating their newly acquired Victorian-era home, they anticipated uncovering relics of bygone eras, old newspapers, broken trinkets, forgotten photographs. What they didn't expect was to stumble upon a letter, carefully tucked beneath the floorboards, waiting to be discovered. The paper, aged and fragile, bore a cryptic message that sent shivers down their spines. Don't trust the one who knocked. Before they could fully process the eerie find, 3 sharp knocks reverberated through the silent house, adding a surreal touch to the unfolding mystery. Enter Detective Alina Reed, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for unraveling enigmas. With the floorboards still upturned, exposing the hidden recesses below, Reed delicately retrieved the note, mindful of preserving any potential evidence. The couple's inadvertent contact with the letter had already tainted it, but Reed pressed on, determined to make sense of the unsettling events. Sarah and Michael, innocent newlyweds with impeccable backgrounds, stood bewildered as Reed delved into the history of the house. Once owned by the reclusive Hargrove family, the property harbored a tale of secrets and shadows. The late Margaret Hargrove, the final resident of the house, had passed away under seemingly ordinary circumstances, or so it seemed. As Reed sifted through the layers of the past, a chilling narrative began to emerge. The note, dated 2 decades prior, hinted at a tale of fear and desperation. Franklin and Margaret Hargrove's lives intertwined with that of a mysterious figure known only as the Collector, a man shrouded in mystery and menace. Through painstaking investigation and poignant recollections from those who knew the Hargroves, Reed pieced together a harrowing saga of debt, deceit, and death. Franklin's gambling debts had spiraled out of control, leading to a fateful confrontation with the enigmatic collector, Victor Mercer. Margaret's whispered confessions and hidden diaries unveiled a haunting truth buried within the walls of the house. A grim discovery beneath the foundation confirmed the darkest suspicions, a life cut short, a soul lost to the shadows of the past. As the case reached its resolution, justice served in a cold and somber manner, Sarah and Michael made a decision to part ways with the house, unable to bear the weight of its grim history. The once promising renovation project lay abandoned, a testament to the mysteries that lingered within its walls. Whispers of phantom knocks in the dead of night became local lore, a haunting echo of a past that refused to be forgotten. Detective Reed, in her final report, mused on the enigmatic nature of unresolved mysteries, acknowledging that some truths may forever remain obscured by the veil of time. And so the house stood silent and empty, a silent witness to the secrets it held. The letter, now a relic of a bygone era, remained a chilling reminder of a cautionary tale. Don't trust the one who knocked. Whether the echoes that lingered in the vacant halls were mere echoes of the past or something more sinister, one thing remained certain: the shadows of the past held secrets that refused to be fully unveiled. Story 11. The town kept silent about the house on the edge of the woods. It stood solitary, its windows dark, its porch weary from the weight of time. No one laid claim to it, no one could recall its builder. But when a band of hikers strayed too near, they stumbled upon something peculiar, names etched into the wooden siding, carved deep like omens. At the end of the list, fresh and untouched, was a name unfamiliar to all. until one of them murmured, voice quivering, "That's mine." A call came in under the cloak of night. Dispatch logged it as a routine trespassing incident. The voice on the line belonged to Mason Wright, the leader of the hikers who unearthed his name etched into the abandoned dwelling. The responding officers anticipated nothing beyond adolescent mischief, perhaps a jest among companions. However, what they uncovered defied logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as nightfall draped the forest. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing the aged facade of the structure. The names, 27 in total, cascaded vertically down the eastern wall. Some had faded with time, nearly vanishing against the weathered wood. Others remained crisp, as if freshly carved. And at the base, Mason Wright, the incision still bearing traces of new sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason insisted, his breath materializing in the frigid air. "I can't fathom how anyone would know my name." The inquiry commenced with checks on the backgrounds of each listed name. The findings sent shivers through the detective team. Every name corresponded to an individual reported missing over the preceding 4 decades. Some cases had grown cold, others remained open. Yet all shared a haunting similarity: the individuals had vanished while hiking alone. Forensic analysts photographed each inscription, documenting the varying depths, techniques, and weathered appearances. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, aligned with a missing persons case from 37 years ago. The case files recounted a young woman who ventured into those woods and never returned. Search parties unearthed naught but a lone hiking boot beside a stream. Detective Keller interrogated Mason extensively. His account remained unwavering. He bore no ties to the area beyond this hiking expedition with 4 college comrades. They had selected the trail randomly, guided by an online suggestion. No aspect of his history linked him to any of the other names on the wall. The focus of the investigation shifted to Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, supplied images captured throughout their trek. Upon scrutinizing the photographs, analysts discerned something unsettling. A blurred figure loomed in the backdrop of 3 separate snapshots. The silhouette resembled a tall, slender man, always partially veiled by trees. "We encountered no one else on the trail," Emily affirmed. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller sanctioned a search of the house's interior. The edifice appeared deserted. Dust cloaked every surface. Furniture lay shattered and strewn. Yet in the basement, officers stumbled upon a chilling tableau. Personal effects belonging to the missing hikers sat neatly arranged on wooden shelves. Watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each tagged with a corresponding name from the exterior wall. The evidence technicians toiled meticulously, cataloging every item. Beneath ultraviolet light, bloodstains materialized on the concrete floor, years of marks someone had endeavored to erase. Ground-penetrating radar unveiled no bodies interred beneath the house, yet cadaver dogs signaled repeatedly near the rear of the property, where the forest thickened. As the investigation escalated, Detective Keller observed peculiar conduct from Mason Wright. He began recounting uncanny incidents, whispers beyond his apartment, footprints in fresh snow leading to his door but not away, figures observing from the street. The department assigned an officer to safeguard him, yet Mason descended into deep paranoia. The breakthrough arose when researchers exhumed land records buried in county archives. The house had belonged to a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood. Neighbors seldom glimpsed him, recounting brief encounters with an unsettlingly tall, gaunt man who shunned conversation. Blackwood vanished without a trace 15 years ago, his disappearance never subjected to official scrutiny. Detective Keller secured a warrant for an in-depth search of the surrounding forest. The search party unearthed a network of rudimentary hunting blinds, strategically stationed along frequented hiking trails. Within one, they stumbled upon a journal housing meticulous observations, depictions of hikers, their paths, gear, and routines. The script mirrored samples from Victor Blackwood's scant existing documents. The journal entries grew increasingly chilling over time. Early pages delineated hunting methods for animals. Later entries portrayed humans as quarry their behaviors, vulnerabilities, and techniques for their collection. The final pages contained intricate narratives of stalking each victim on the wall, including elaborate accounts of how he singled out his targets. The manhunt for Blackwood mobilized across multiple jurisdictions. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging scoured the forest. Tactical teams combed every crevice and cavern, yet no trace of the suspect surfaced. Mason Wright ceased answering his phone. Officers dispatched to his abode found the entrance ajar, the rooms deserted. Upon his bedroom wall, freshly etched, was a single inscription: "The hunter becomes the hunted." The search for Mason ensued for weeks to no avail. Then, during a secondary sweep of Blackwood's domicile, forensic technicians unearthed a horrifying revelation. Concealed behind a false partition in the basement, they uncovered a small workshop housing woodworking tools, jars of wood preservatives, and a freshly carved piece of wood bearing a new name not yet affixed to the exterior wall. Detective Keller recognized the name instantly. It belonged to the chief forensic technician who had processed the house during the initial investigation. The technician had called in sick that morning and remained unreachable by phone. Authorities erected an unceasing surveillance perimeter around the house. Camera systems documented every approach. Motion sensors monitored for intrusions. The trap was set. 3 nights later, sensors sounded an alarm. Security footage captured a figure emerging from the forest, impossibly tall and slender, moving with an unnatural poise. The figure advanced directly towards the house, seemingly unfazed by the surveillance. As tactical teams closed in, the cameras momentarily lost connection. Upon restoration, the figure had vanished. The house endures under perpetual surveillance to this day. Mason Wright and the forensic technician were never located. The investigation persists, with fresh resources allocated as similar vanishings are reported in other wooded regions. The names on the wall have become folklore among law enforcement officials. Some officers balk at uttering them aloud, others steer clear of the case entirely. And local hikers now circumvent the house, fearful that mentioning it might somehow add their names to that dreadful list, the names never spoken. Story 12: The Enigmatic Dollhouse. She never fancied ascending to the attic, but when the storm provoked a leak in the roof, she had no alternative. The attic was a realm of forgotten treasures, shrouded in dust and cobwebs. Nestled in the deepest corner rested an ancient dollhouse, intricately detailed, its petite furniture meticulously arranged. Yet as she gazed into its depths, a knot twisted in her stomach. The figures within were not mere dolls, they were minuscule, hand-carved replicas of her kin. Every figure positioned precisely where they had been seated downstairs, except for one. The figure meant to portray her stood by the attic portal. Rebecca Morgan trailed her finger along the dollhouse roof, sensing the groove where the small wooden figure resided. The revelation sent a shiver through her being, unrelated to the chill wind whistling through the rafters. The dollhouse had no place there at all. This wasn't her childhood abode, but a rented dwelling her family had recently entered. The saga commenced with Rebecca's frantic call to law enforcement. Officers arrived at the suburban dwelling to find a distressed family, clustered in their living area, hesitant to return upstairs. The lead investigator, Detective Sarah Harmon, initially brushed off their concerns as an elaborate hoax or perhaps the product of vivid imaginations adapting to a new house. The meticulousness struck me, Detective Harmon would later recount in interviews. Each tiny figurine captured a unique trait of each family member: the father's thinning hair, the son's hoodie, even the small birthmark on the mother's hand. The inquiry took a turn when forensic teams unearthed fingerprints on the dollhouse that matched none of the family members. Even more unsettling were microscopic cameras found concealed in the eyes of each miniature figure, all linked to a sophisticated recording system hidden beneath the dollhouse itself. Scrutiny of the Morgan family's activities in the preceding days unveiled a disquieting pattern. The positions of the figures in the dollhouse not only mirrored where the family had been seated that evening, but replicated exact stances from various days, implying someone had observed them long enough to learn their routines. We realized we were not dealing with a mere case of stalking, elucidated Detective Harmon. The perpetrator exhibited a level of fixation rarely documented in criminal psychology. The investigation unveiled a concealed entrance to the basement, camouflaged behind a false wall in the pantry. Inside, investigators stumbled upon a makeshift living area, indicating someone had been dwelling there before the Morgans' arrival. Food wrappers, water bottles, and a sleeping bag hinted that the intruder had been residing beneath the family for weeks. What confounded investigators most was the absence of forced entry. Property records disclosed that the house had sat vacant for nearly a year before the Morgans' occupancy. The former owners, an elderly couple, had both passed away within months of each other. Their son had overseen the estate sale and subsequent property rental. Conversations with neighbors yielded scant information. Mostly they had observed nothing out of the ordinary, though one elderly lady mentioned sporadically spotting lights in the house during its vacancy period. I presumed it was the real estate agents showing the property, she informed investigators. Never crossed my mind someone might be residing there without permission. The breakthrough came through digital forensics. Scrutinizing the surveillance system linked to the miniature cameras, analysts unearthed that the data was being transmitted to an external server. The IP address directed investigators to a modest apartment across town. Inside, walls adorned with photographs of the Morgan family and former house occupants greeted them. Journal entries meticulously chronicled the daily routines of each family member. The most bone-chilling find was a workshop housing dozens of partially constructed dollhouses, each representing varied homes in the vicinity. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, the son of the previous homeowners. His financial records unveiled mounting debts after his parents' demise. Instead of selling the house outright, he had fashioned a covert living space, continuing to dwell there while collecting rent from unsuspecting tenants. The dollhouse served as his command center, expounded the forensic psychologist assigned to the case. Each figure symbolized someone he observed. The figure of Rebecca by the attic door wasn't a threat, it was his way of acknowledging her discovery of his surveillance system. During interrogation, Wells remained oddly composed as he expounded on his motives. They were dwelling in my house, slumbering in my parents' chamber. I needed to ensure they respected it. When probed about the positioned figures, he merely stated, I wanted them to know I was always watching. The psychological assessment unveiled a convoluted case of possessive delusion. Wells struggled to cope with losing his childhood abode and devised an intricate system to retain control over it. The dollhouse became his tool to possess both the property and its inhabitants. The Morgan family never set foot in the house again. Rebecca later recounted that the most haunting moment was not discovering the dollhouse, but comprehending its implications. Someone had been watching us all along, measuring our lives, transforming us into playthings. The true horror wasn't the dollhouse itself, it was realizing that in his mind we were merely puppets to be arranged and observed. Wells faced multiple charges of stalking, invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, and trespassing. The case prompted a reassessment of real estate disclosure laws regarding deaths on properties and agents' responsibility to ensure homes are properly vacated before new occupants move in. At sentencing, the judge acknowledged the extraordinary violation the Morgan family had endured. You didn't just intrude into their home, you encroached upon their sense of security and independence. You witnessed their most private moments and replicated them for your own amusement. What unsettles criminologists the most about the case is how long Wells could have persisted unnoticed had Rebecca not stumbled upon the dollhouse. Forensic scrutiny of his journals hinted that he had covertly resided within homes for nearly 2 years, transitioning from one property to another, crafting dollhouses of each observed family. The Morgan family eventually relocated to a distant abode, but Rebecca admitted in victim impact statements that she still inspects closets and crawl spaces habitually. She removed all dollhouses and miniatures from their new dwelling. "Some days I still sense eyes upon me," she confessed. "I ponder if somewhere, someone is still maneuvering a miniature version of me within an undiscovered dollhouse." Story 13. In a quaint town, a young mother-to-be decided to refresh the nursery for her incoming bundle of joy. The walls, once adorned in a soft, faded blue, held secrets within their layers. As she applied the first strokes of white paint, a hidden message emerged from beneath the surface, faint at first, then growing clearer with each passing moment. "Don't let it hear you." Her heart skipped a beat as she took a step back, only to notice something peculiar: tiny handprints imprinted in the fresh paint, positioned too high for any child to reach. This discovery within the Morgan residence marked the inception of what would later be known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had acquired the Victorian-style home at a remarkably low price, unaware of its ominous past. Detective Sarah Klein arrived at the doorstep, a notebook clutched in her hand. The pregnant woman who greeted her wore paint-splattered overalls, her eyes shadowed with fatigue from sleepless nights. Trembling, she recounted the unsettling find of the hidden message and handprints left behind by unseen forces. The previous owners had vanished under mysterious circumstances, leaving only essential belongings behind as they fled in the dead of night, as relayed by concerned neighbors. Inside the historic house, Detective Klein's footsteps echoed through the corridors, each creak of the floorboards whispering of the home's enigmatic history. In the nursery, the unfinished painting revealed the cryptic message untouched, accompanied by 5 child-sized handprints etched into the wet paint. Back at the precinct, the detective delved into the property's records, uncovering a disturbing pattern of frequent turnover and troubling incidents involving children. The house had once belonged to Alina Blackwood, a widow who ran an orphanage from the premises. Newspaper clippings hinted at the disappearance of 5 children under her care, their fate shrouded in mystery. Interviewing former residents shed light on a series of eerie occurrences within the house: whispers in the walls, unseen entities, and unsettling messages written on the nursery walls, always cautioning the unsuspecting inhabitants. The forensic evidence pointed to a dark history intertwined with Alina's malevolent intentions. Upon gaining permission from the current owners, Detective Klein authorized a thorough investigation of the basement using ground-penetrating radar. The readings revealed 5 distinct shapes beneath the concrete floor, prompting a chilling excavation that unearthed the remains of the missing children, confirming their tragic end during Alina's tenure. The nursery was bathed in luminol, revealing countless handprints adorning the walls, a silent testament to the children's desperate attempts to escape their fate. Eliner's journals unveiled her macabre scheme to harness their life force for her own gain, sealing their existence within the hidden room. As the case concluded with a proper burial for the victims, the house stood silent, its walls holding onto the echoes of past horrors. The nursery was dismantled, yet workers reported ghostly whispers emanating from the debris, refusing to set foot inside after dusk. The dwelling was condemned, a chilling reminder of the lingering presence that transcended time and paint. Detective Klein preserved a haunting photograph from the investigation, 5 luminous handprints etched in darkness, a poignant reminder that some tragedies leave indelible marks beyond the realm of mortal understanding. Story 14. The worn wooden plank shifted beneath her foot, a subtle movement that caught her attention. Intrigued, she knelt down and traced her fingers along the edges, sensing a hidden secret beneath the seemingly solid floor. With delicate precision, she lifted the boards, unveiling a dark, narrow space concealed beneath her new home. At first, only dust and cobwebs met her gaze, but as her eyes adjusted to the dimness, shapes began to emerge. A mattress, a chair. And tucked away in the corner, a weathered notebook filled with pages bearing a single name, her name repeated endlessly. Detective Morgan Reed stood silently behind Sarah Coleman as she peered into the shadowy depths below. The fear flickering in Sarah's eyes went beyond mere surprise. It spoke of a violation of safety, an encroachment of something sinister into what was meant to be a fresh beginning. "Don't disturb anything." Detective Reed's voice was steady yet commanding as she switched on her flashlight, casting light into the hidden recesses. The beam exposed walls plastered with surveillance photos, images of Sarah going about her daily life, unaware of being watched. It was a shrine of obsession that had lurked right beneath her very feet. Sarah had acquired the quaint cottage from the estate of an elderly man named Walter Green, a solitary figure who had passed away with no known kin. The property had sat empty for months before Sarah's purchase, described in the real estate listing as charming and in need of minor touch-ups. No mention had been made of anything out of the ordinary during inspections or transactions. "I never met him, the previous owner," Sarah's voice barely above a whisper. "The neighbors said he kept to himself. I was told the basement access had been sealed off ages ago. That's what the inspection report stated." As crime scene investigators arrived with their equipment, the heavy thud of their cases against the wooden flooring filled the space. They meticulously documented every detail, collecting evidence and eventually retrieving the mattress, chair, and notebook from the hidden chamber. Forensic analysis later revealed a plethora of fingerprints belonging solely to Walter Green scattered throughout the hidden room. What troubled investigators most was the timeline they constructed. Through utility records and dated photographs found in the chamber, it became apparent that Walter had been observing Sarah for at least 3 years before his demise. He had frequented the same places as her, blending into the background, a ghostly presence she had never noticed. This level of fixation often escalates, the department psychologist elucidated during a debriefing. The subject progresses from fantasy to scheming. The concealed room implies a readiness for more direct actions. Detective Reed's inquiry took an unexpected turn during an interview with Walter's former colleague from the maintenance department at the local shopping center. The man appeared uneasy, fiddling with his wedding band as they spoke. Walter mentioned her sometimes, he confessed. Claimed she reminded him of someone. "I thought it was just an old man's infatuation. I never imagined. His voice trailed off, lost in thought. Did he ever discuss any intentions involving her? Reed probed further. Not explicitly, but he had this phrase he'd repeat, something about how she belongs with me. I assumed it was mere words. Securing a warrant to explore Walter's workplace locker, which had remained untouched posthumously, they uncovered a key that bore no match in his residence. The serial number led them to a storage unit registered in his name. With a grating screech, the metal door of the unit rolled open, revealing meticulously arranged furnishings mirroring Sarah's former apartment replicas of her bed, desk, and even her living room setup. A mannequin adorned with a wig mimicking Sarah's hairstyle sat at the duplicate desk. The most unsettling discovery was a calendar marked with a date precisely 1 week following Walter's sudden death from a heart attack. The red-circled date bore a single word: together. Further investigation unveiled Walter's institutionalization during his youth due to an infatuation with a female teacher. His records documented treatment for erotomania, a delusion where the individual believes fervently that another reciprocates their love despite all evidence to the contrary. Released into society, Walter had lived uneventfully for years until Sarah unwittingly ignited his dormant obsession. At the precinct, Reed spread out crime scene photographs across the conference table. In his mind, he passed believing in a special bond with her. To him, their fates were intertwined. Could she have crossed paths with him somewhere, triggering this fixation? A fellow detective pondered. We found no evidence to support that. Sometimes these fixations require only a small catalyst, a fleeting smile, sustained eye contact for a moment too long. For an individual with his background, that could be all it takes. Sarah made the decision to sell the house, unable to find solace within its walls any longer. During the final walkthrough with her realtor, she stood in the living room, a shiver running through her as she embraced herself. I can't help but wonder what might have unfolded if he hadn't passed when he did, she murmured softly. How long would I have dwelled here, oblivious to his watchful eyes, unaware of the secrets hidden beneath my feet? With Walter's demise, the case was officially closed, classified as stalking with intent to abduct, though no abduction transpired. The psychological evaluation of the evidence suggested Walter had plotted to confine Sarah within either the hidden chamber or storage unit. Sarah relocated far away, altering her routines and guarding her personal information vigilantly. Detective Reed occasionally checked in on her, a silent acknowledgement of how narrowly Sarah had evaded becoming another tragic statistic, another casualty. The cottage found new owners and a young couple unaware of its haunting past. The concealed room was securely sealed, the floorboards replaced. Life persisted, but for those privy to the truth, the tale of the hidden room beneath the floor remained a chilling reminder of the unseen dangers that linger, of monsters who perish before facing justice, and of victims who remain oblivious to how closely they skirted their own demise. Story 15. In the dim light of the attic, nestled beneath a worn, tattered blanket, they discovered it a porcelain doll, its delicate features frozen in time. Its blue eyes stared out wide and unblinking, as if holding onto a secret from the past. Sarah and Michael, a young couple drawn to the old Victorian house's mystique, chuckled at the sight of the forgotten antique. Little did they know that moment would unravel a tale woven with mystery and darkness. That night, as they lay in bed, a subtle unease crept into the air, casting a heaviness over the room. The silence seemed to stretch endlessly, broken only by the rustle of the wind outside. And when morning dawned, the doll was no longer in the attic where they had left it. Instead, it sat ominously at the foot of their bed, a silent sentinel watching over them. Sarah and Michael's journey into the shadows of the past began when Detective Rachel Winters received a call on a crisp autumn morning. The scene she encountered in the master bedroom was chilling. A female victim posed in an unnatural stance, eyes wide with fear, and a male victim seemingly caught in a desperate attempt to flee. The mystery unfolded like a dark tapestry, each thread leading deeper into a web of secrets. As Detective Winters delved into the investigation, a sense of foreboding grew. Neighbors whispered of strange occurrences, a shadow glimpsed in an upstairs window, the haunting echo of childlike laughter in the dead of night. The house seemed to hold secrets long buried, waiting to be unearthed. Forensic findings only deepened the enigma. Traces of vintage fabrics, like whispers from another time, clung to the victims and the attic space. Yet there were no fingerprints, no DNA except for the victims, no tangible evidence of an intruder. It was as though the perpetrator existed beyond the physical realm, leaving only eerie remnants in their wake. The history of the house painted a grim picture, with a recurring pattern of tragedy spanning decades. Each previous owner had met a mysterious end, their stories shrouded in enigmatic details. A connection emerged. Modifications made to the attic where the doll had resided seemed to invite a malevolent presence into their lives. A breakthrough came in the form of old photographs hidden beneath the attic floorboards. Images of the doll maker and his creations revealed a sinister truth. The doll found by Sarah and Michael had a dark legacy, its eerie presence captured in frozen moments of time. The walls whispered of unseen hands, guiding a path from attic to bedroom, leaving behind a trail of porcelain dust and unknown substances. A distant relative of the doll maker shared chilling tales of forbidden rituals, of spirits bound to objects, of dolls meant to be more than mere playthings. The revelation sent shivers down Detective Winters' spine, casting a shadow of doubt over the investigation. The truth seemed to slip through her grasp like smoke, leaving only unanswered questions in its wake. And then a disappearance of the doll, of evidence, of memories. The line between reality and nightmare blurred, as if the house itself held sway over those who dared to uncover its secrets. Detective Winters retired, leaving behind a legacy of unresolved mysteries and a haunting photograph locked away, a silent witness to the darkness that lingered. The house passed into new hands, its attic holding only echoes of the past. Yet on quiet nights, whispers of laughter and fleeting shadows hinted at a presence unseen, a tale unfinished, waiting to be told once more in the hushed whispers of the night. Story 16. The gentle current whispered softly that morning, the water reflecting the sky like a mirror. The fisherman's eyes lazily scanned the tranquil surface, almost missing the peculiar sight of a solitary suitcase bobbing near the shore. At first glance, it appeared as if someone had carelessly tossed aside a bundle of old garments, but as he approached, a noxious odor enveloped him, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. The case was encased in chains, its corners weathered and rusted by the elements. When authorities pried it open, it was not clothes that greeted them, but a haunting discovery. Within the confines of the case lay hair, fingers frozen in a silent grasp, and at the very bottom a cryptic note rested, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer, a figure of quiet resolve, delicately pressed a handkerchief to her nose as she observed the somber scene before her. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s, with dark locks and now pallid skin marked by the touch of water, lay motionless. The meticulous medical examiner meticulously catalogued every detail before the body was tenderly removed from its watery grave. What struck Mercer most profoundly was not the method of disposal, but the eerie reverence with which the victim had been arranged. Manicured nails, freshly styled hair, adorned in opulent attire. She was not just discarded here, Mercer remarked, her gaze fixed on the gentle ebb and flow of the water against the muddy banks. She was placed, adorned. The victim was identified as Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent renowned for her expertise in selling upscale properties. Divorced, childless, she dwelled alone in an affluent enclave. Colleagues painted a portrait of a woman driven by ambition, meticulous in her ways, a guardian of her privacy. Her absence was noted when she failed to appear for a crucial showing with affluent clients, a showing that promised to yield her largest commission yet. She would never miss that appointment, her assistant fervently attested during questioning. That sale meant everything to her. The investigation led to Walsh's sleek, modern abode. Every facet of her home exuded a pristine allure almost too perfect. Designer furnishings arranged with precision, not a speck of dust daring to mar the surfaces. The refrigerator, a sanctuary of meticulously organized meals, each labeled by the day. Her wardrobe, a rainbow of hues meticulously categorized, shoes cradled in protective sheaths. Yet a solitary drawer stood slightly ajar in her home office. Within, a leather-bound journal lay in repose. The final entry read, "He watches once more. Same vehicle, altered plates." Delving into Walsh's digital footprint unveiled a curious pattern in her emails, numerous messages emanating from unfamiliar addresses, all bearing the same unsettling phrase, "I bear witness to your perfection." Each missive dispatched with meticulous precision at identical times on varying days. Her internet browsing history hinted at a preoccupation with home security systems and self-defense mechanisms. Mercer wove these threads together, linking the evidence from the crime scene with the chilling presentation of the victim. "Our perpetrator is deliberate," she confided to her partner. "This was not a crime of passion. This was a meticulously orchestrated ritual." The pivotal breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source. A local pawnbroker recognized Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace, conspicuously absent from her personal effects. The individual who had pawned the necklace was a familiar face, Michael Linden, an unassuming maintenance worker of few words. Surveillance footage captured Linden's frequent visits to Walsh's building over the span of months, sometimes wheeling his maintenance cart, other times unaccompanied, always choosing moments when she would be absent, showcasing properties to potential buyers. A search of Linden's modest residence unveiled a trove of unsettling revelations. Photographs adorned his walls, capturing Walsh and other women in candid moments, all sharing a striking resemblance, all captured without their knowledge. Some images were defaced with crimson slashes. Walsh was the third in his macabre collection. Concealed behind a false panel in his closet lay a shrine. Possessions belonging to each victim meticulously arrayed: a hairbrush bearing strands of hair, tissues imprinted with lipstick stains, receipts, keys. Each assemblage accompanied by a minuscule journal chronicling daily routines, preferences, idiosyncrasies. The interrogation room fell into a hushed chill as Linden was brought forth. Clad in a demeanor of placid composure, his unassuming fa-de seemed incongruent with the horrors he had wrought. When confronted with the damning evidence, his countenance remained unchanged. "They were flawed," he eventually murmured, his voice devoid of inflection. "They presented a facade of flawlessness, but I saw through their mask." Catherine's desk drawer was always in disarray. She missed a spot when applying her lipstick. Her perfection was a fa-de. The search for the two victims alluded to in his cryptic note led investigators to remote locales where 2 additional suitcases were dredged from obscurity. Within lay women bearing a resemblance to Walsh, both real estate agents who prided themselves on their meticulous attention to detail. As the trial unfolded, Linden sat in stoic silence, his visage an enigmatic canvas as prosecutors meticulously unraveled his modus operandi. He had shadowed each woman for months, assimilating their routines, infiltrating their sanctuaries, studying their lives. And when the moment arrived to claim them, he sought to correct what he perceived as their imperfections, washing and styling their hair, expertly applying makeup, dressing them in finery before extinguishing their light. Families of the victims bore witness in silence as the judge pronounced a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of release. For Detective Mercer, the chapter was officially concluded, yet enigmas persisted. What ignited Lyndon's fixation on these specific women? What inner blemish was he attempting to expunge through his macabre acts? The river meandered on, its waters a tranquil balm that eventually cleansed all traces of the tragedy. Yet in the precinct upon Mercer's desk lay copies of those haunting journals, an eerie reminder that in the ordinary tapestry of existence, shadows sometimes loomed beneath the veneer of normalcy. And perhaps the most perilous predators were those who dwelled in plain view, observing, waiting for a solitary imperfection to betray their malevolent nature. Story 17. The tale of the new occupants started with a peculiar detail: the crackling of the old intercom system in the dead of night. A relic of days gone by, revamped but left to gather dust in obscurity. It was a feature of the Victorian manor that Daniel and Meredith Parker had acquired at a surprisingly modest cost, despite the realtor's uneasy demeanor during the initial tour. The manor, with its aged fa-deck camouflaging a modernized interior, stood nestled amidst ancient oak trees, exuding an aura of mystery. One fateful night, curiosity got the better of the husband. With a hesitant press of the button, a whisper echoed through the crackling speaker, chilling him to the core. "Why did you come back?" the husband recoiled, hands trembling as his wife, standing behind him, swore she had never uttered those words. When Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a potential break-in call, she sensed there was more to the situation than met the eye. Daniel, his complexion ashen, recounted the eerie events that had unfolded, static turning into whispers, whispers into coherent sentences emanating from the intercom system that connected all rooms. In the living room, Meredith sat tense on an antique sofa, gripping a mug of untouched tea. She divulged that a hidden discovery behind a wall had unraveled the unsettling mystery. As Daniel had sought to expand the kitchen pantry, they stumbled upon a small leather-bound journal belonging to Eleanor, the presumed previous owner. The journal chronicled Eleanor's escalating fear of her husband Vincent's malevolent intentions, culminating in a final entry from 30 years past, after which all traces of her existence seemed to vanish. Intrigued by the journal's revelations, Detective Reeves delved into the history of the property. Records confirmed that Vincent and Eleanor Blackwood had indeed resided in the house. Yet the absence of Eleanor's whereabouts post the final journal entry raised suspicions. A meticulous investigation unearthed anomalies beneath the garden shed's concrete foundation, leading to the discovery of human remains, a woman in her 40s, bearing signs of fatal head injuries. A wedding band inscribed with "To Eleanor, my eternal love," added a poignant layer to the grim puzzle. The evidence against Vincent Blackwood mounted swiftly. Confined to a care facility in his twilight years, he confessed to the crime with an unsettling calmness. Vincent's chilling admission of silencing Eleanor, who incessantly communicated through the intercom, painted a macabre picture of his twisted reality. His elaborate charade of Eleanor's departure, sustained by forged postcards and deceit, crumbled under the weight of truth. The trial concluded swiftly, with Vincent pleading guilty to the heinous act of murder. The judge, acknowledging the premeditated nature of the crime and the decades of deceit, delivered a stern sentence. Daniel and Meredith, unable to shake off the house's dark past, sold the property, bidding farewell to its haunting legacy. Before their departure, they held a solemn memorial for Alina in the rejuvenated garden, which had harbored her remains for years. The intercom system, a conduit for Alina's voice from beyond, was dismantled by the subsequent owners during renovations. Workers reported eerie static and whispers during the removal, attributing it to mere electrical interference. Detective Reeves revisited the Blackwood case file before its archival, pondering how the house itself had unveiled its long-buried secret. The tale of the house that answered back echoed through local law enforcement, a reminder that even in silence, the past could find a way to speak. As Detective Reeves drove past the property in the twilight hours, she would slow down, attuned to the whispers carried on the wind, a haunting reminder of a story that had transcended time. Story 18, the vacant house had remained untouched for years, a silent witness to the enigmatic disappearance of a young woman named Elise Winters. Whispers from the neighbors hinted at her vanishing without a trace, leaving behind a mystery that lingered in the air like a faint echo. When new tenants ventured into the house, they were met with a peculiar sight: the bedroom locked from within, as if guarding its secrets from prying eyes. With a sense of trepidation, the new occupants managed to breach the sealed room, greeted by the musty embrace of neglected time. Amidst the layers of dust, a peculiar stillness hung in the air, a quiet unease that danced on the edge of perception. The bed was neatly made, the mirror devoid of smudges, a solitary candle extinguished, its waxy tears frozen in time. And there upon the desk lay a notebook, its pages whispering untold tales of the past. Detective Morgan delicately traced Elise's words, penned with a precision that bespoke of a meticulous mind now lost to the shadows of memory. Each stroke of her handwriting spoke of a woman haunted by unseen forces, a truth buried beneath layers of deception. As the investigation unfolded, a tapestry of Elise's life began to unravel, a paralegal entwined in a web of corporate intrigue, her pursuit of justice leading her down a perilous path. The room bore witness to her silent struggles, a battleground of ideals clashing with the darkness that lurked in the shadows. The detective's gaze swept across the room, searching for answers in the silent echoes that reverberated off the walls. The air carried a hint of something amiss, a faint scent of chemicals mingling with the staleness of neglect. The landlord, a ghostly figure in the doorway, muttered of missed inspections and overlooked secrets, his demeanor a mask for the unease that gripped him. Elise's story unfolded in fragments, each piece a puzzle waiting to be solved. Her meticulous nature hinted at a mind unyielding in the face of deception, a spirit unwilling to be silenced by the passage of time. The room held no overt clues, no blatant signs of struggle, only a silent witness to a life interrupted, a truth waiting to be unearthed. As the investigation deepened, hidden truths began to surface, a labyrinth of deceit woven by powerful hands, secrets locked away in the shadows of the past. The discovery of hidden passages and clandestine recordings painted a portrait of corruption, a tapestry of lies unraveled by the light of justice. The courtroom became a stage for reckoning, where the echoes of Elise's voice resonated with unwavering clarity. Her mother's words, a bittersweet elegy to a daughter lost but not forgotten, reverberated through the halls of justice, a testament to a life cut short but a legacy that endured. The house, once a beacon of enigma, now stood as a testament to the resilience of truth, a silent guardian of secrets laid bare. The whispers that haunted its halls spoke of justice served, of a final stand made by a woman whose voice echoed beyond the confines of her tomb. As the night descended, casting shadows upon the empty rooms, a flicker of light danced in the upstairs window, a beacon of remembrance for a soul lost but never silenced. The house stood as a sentinel of the past, a testament to the enduring power of truth in a world shrouded in shadows. And as the stars painted patterns in the sky, the mystery of Elise Winters whispered its final verse, a lullaby of justice served in the stillness of the night. Story 19. The ancient envelope exuded a sense of history, its once pristine edges now tinged with a faded yellow hue, a stark contrast to the fresh stamp adorning it, a mark of recent travels. With cautious reverence, the detective unfurled its contents, revealing a solitary sheet of paper. The message typed upon it bore the hasty imprint of an unsteady hand. "I am sorry for what I did." A faint dampness lingered on the paper, carrying with it a metallic tang that clung to the senses. It wasn't until Detective Sarah Morgan scrutinized the bottom edge that the truth revealed itself, a reddish smear, unmistakably not ink. Swiftly she secured the letter in an evidence bag, her gloved hands expertly preserving the delicate evidence. The forensics team's findings confirmed her suspicions. The stain was that of human blood, a chilling connection to an unsolved homicide case that had long plagued the department. The victim, a bright young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, her body bearing the brutal marks of multiple stab wounds. Her laptop gone, her notes strewn across the floor, hinting at a deadly link to the unfinished story she had been pursuing. Despite exhaustive efforts, the case had grown cold, a mystery shrouded in silence. And now this enigmatic letter had materialized at the precinct, bearing a simple address: Homicide Division. The scant fingerprints on the paper and envelope whispered of a careful hand, one that had worn gloves to conceal its identity. The postmark, however, offered a precarious thread to follow. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Detective Morgan cast the image of the letter at the heart of their investigation board. "This changes everything," she declared, her voice a soft murmur in the somber space. "Our perpetrator carries a burden of remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in this arduous quest, studied the cryptic message. "Or perhaps it is a guise," he proposed, his tone edged with skepticism. "A calculated ploy to toy with us." As the forensics team delved into the unique impressions left by the typewriter, a relic from a bygone era, they embarked on a hunt through antique shops and collectors in search of the elusive model. Simultaneously, the detectives delved into Rebecca's world, unearthing a portrait of a relentless truth-seeker dedicated to unveiling corruption. Her latest inquiries had led her to a wealthy family entangled in local politics, a realm of intrigue and hidden motives. Interviews with her boyfriend, Michael Barnes, unveiled a chilling revelation: Rebecca had feared she was being shadowed. She spoke of a looming presence, Michael confessed, his demeanor a tapestry of unease. "I dismissed her concerns as paranoia, blinded by my own disbelief." As their scrutiny honed in on Michael and the sinister web encircling him, a second missive materialized, bearing the same telltale traces of blood and typewritten words. This time the message wove a darker narrative. She delved too deeply into the family secrets, the inheritance, the patriarch's demise. "I never intended for it to escalate to such depths." The labyrinth of clues led the detectives to the grand estate of the deceased patriarch, where they confronted his eldest son, Richard. An avid collector of antiquities, Richard's possession of vintage typewriters hinted at a hidden truth. His polished veneer cracked under scrutiny, revealing a facade of deceit. The pivotal breakthrough emerged with the discovery of microscopic fibers on the envelopes, linking them to custom stationery exclusive to the family's youngest daughter, Eleanor. A clandestine exchange between Richard and Eleanor unraveled, exposing a sinister plot fueled by greed and treachery. A search of Richard's abode unearthed a trove of damning evidence, newspaper clippings, surveillance materials, and the incriminating typewriter. The blood analysis sealed Rebecca's tragic fate, connecting her to the heart of the deception. Yet the most startling revelation lay in the tangled bond between Richard and Michael. Financial transactions traced a damning trail of complicity, painting a grim portrait of betrayal and collusion. Michael's confession unraveled the tangled web further, laying bare the chilling truth of Rebecca's demise. The final piece of the puzzle emerged in the form of Aliner's covert recording, capturing the damning dialogue between Richard and Michael, sealing their fates. As justice unfolded in the courtroom, Richard's protestations of innocence crumbled beneath the weight of irrefutable evidence. The jury's swift verdict echoed the finality of his guilt, a testament to the relentless pursuit of truth. Detective Morgan, her gaze steady, approached Rebecca's grieving parents, offering solace in the shadow of their loss. The blood-stained letters, poignant relics of a twisted tale, stood as a stark reminder that even the most meticulously crafted facades can unravel, laid bare by the haunting specter of remorse. The legacy of Rebecca Warren's case burgeoned into a cautionary tale, a whispered reminder that in the quiet hum of an old typewriter lies the echo of a killer's conscience, an indelible mark etched in the annals of justice. Story 20. Once upon a time, there was a man who frequented a quaint coffee shop for as long as anyone could remember. His presence was as constant as the rising sun, same table, same order, same quiet demeanor. The barista recognized his face, but his name remained a mystery to all. Then one fateful day, the man failed to make his usual appearance. Concerned, the police investigated and found a wallet abandoned at his customary seat. Inside lay a driver's license with a face but no name, no address, just an eerie void where his identity should have been. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the perplexing case, her fingertips tracing the cold metal table as she scrutinized the surveillance footage. The enigmatic figure, now dubbed John Doe, seemed ordinary on screen, average in stature, unassuming in appearance, clad in a navy coat with a weathered leather messenger bag slung over his shoulder. His unremarkableness only deepened the mystery of his sudden disappearance. "Replay it," Mercer requested of the tech specialist. The footage depicted John entering the bustling coffee shop during the morning rush, placing his usual order of black coffee sans sugar, then settling at a secluded table obscured by foliage. Engrossed in writing within a notebook, he occasionally glanced out the window between sips of his drink. And then the inexplicable moment arrived. He left his wallet on the table, rose, and headed towards the restroom corridor, but he never returned. He never emerged through any exit. He simply vanished into thin air. "Examine the restroom footage," Mercer directed. "That's the puzzling part," the specialist replied. "No sign of him entering any restroom. We've combed through every angle to no avail. It's as if he evaporated into nothingness." Back at the precinct, Mercer sifted through the contents of the wallet splayed across her desk. The driver's license photo matched the enigmatic man, yet the personal details were conspicuously absent, replaced by vacant spaces. Credit cards devoid of names, only strings of numbers leading to non-existent accounts. Neatly arranged cash, a recent coffee shop receipt, and a solitary business card blank on both sides, save for a faintly printed phone number. Upon dialing, the line connected silently, accompanied by the rustling of paper before abruptly disconnecting. The barista, a witness to John's silent patronage, offered sparse insights. He seldom spoke, but his manners were impeccable, generous with tips. I believe he may have had an accent, though so hushed it eluded identification. Mercer inquired further, did he ever engage with anyone here, hold conversations? Never, the barista replied, always solitary, engrossed in his writing. The notebook filled with cryptic symbols resembling code confounded cryptographers. Detailed architectural sketches within its pages depicted unfamiliar structures. Mercer dispatched officers to scour the vicinity with John Doe's image, yet no one recognized him. No missing persons reports aligned with his description. His fingerprints remained absent from all databases, as if he existed solely within the confines of that coffee shop. During her scrutiny of the security footage, Mercer discerned a peculiar anomaly. Each morning as John entered, the camera's timestamp flickered momentarily. Dismissed as a technical glitch, Mercer harbored doubts. Returning to the coffee shop, she settled at John's abandoned table. Positioned to observe both the entrance and the restroom hallway, a vintage mirror hung between them, its ornate frame etched with symbols akin to those in John's notebook. Inquiring about the mirror, Mercer learned from the owner of its enduring presence. It predates my tenure here, an integral part of the establishment, immovable without considerable effort, never shifted for cleaning or refurbishing. Mercer approached the mirror, her reflection bearing an unsettling depth due to a subtle distortion. Anticipating cool glass, her hand encountered an unexpected warmth upon contact. Forensics uncovered a concealed compartment behind the mirror, housing identical wallets with blank identifiers, and a leather journal inscribed with entries spanning decades echoing the script within John's notebook. The final entry ominously declared, "The experiment nears its conclusion. They draw closer. The window is narrowing." Fingerprints throughout the hidden enclave matched John Doe's, with carbon dating indicating the wallet's antiquity conflicting with the unchanged visage in the photos. Mentions of experiments in temporal manipulation and identity shifting pervaded the journal, alluding to crossing back and window points. Notably, a passage elucidated, "The coffee shop serves as a nexus, a convergence of realities. The mirror serves as the threshold. When alignment aligns, transit ensues." As the investigation unfolded, peculiar phenomena plagued the coffee shop's patrons. Reports emerged of reflections moving independently in the window glass. Some claimed sightings of John Doe seated at his customary table, though surveillance cameras showed emptiness. The breakthrough surfaced when an elderly woman, Margaret Keller, reached out to the authorities. A former physicist involved in clandestine projects, she identified John Doe as Daniel Weston, a brilliant theoretician who vanished amidst research on quantum mirror structures theorized to facilitate interreality passage. Keller disclosed documents verifying Weston's demise following a lab mishap, aligning with the journal's inception. "He posited our reality as one of many coexisting," Keller elaborated. "Certain locales serve as interstitial points between these realms, gateways for potential traversal." Armed with this revelation, Mercer revisited the coffee shop, uncovering its genesis atop the former research facility where Weston had disappeared. The case's zenith arrived as Mercer, engrossed in late-night footage review, glimpsed a revelation overlooked prior. Within the mirror's reflection, John Doe Daniel Weston observed himself seated at the table. Two iterations of a singular man coexisting in an enigmatic tableau. Rushing to the coffee shop, Mercer encountered the shattered mirror, bearing a final missive scribed in familiar handwriting. "The experiment concludes. The passage is sealed. Do not seek to pursue." The enigma of the vanishing man lingers as an unsolved enigma. The coffee shop shuttered post-inquiry, its edifice eventually razed. Weston's remains elude discovery, his notes and journals vanishing under enigmatic circumstances. Mercer, in the aftermath, is intermittently spotted at home, fervently transcribing in a journal akin to Weston's. Adorning her wall hangs a fragment of an antique mirror, occasionally rippling in unseen moments. Story 21: The Realtor's Secret. The realtor's listing made no mention of a basement. The blueprints provided no clue of its existence. Yet, as the family removed the worn carpet, a hidden door revealed itself, adorned with a heavy, rusted handle. It took the combined effort of 3 curious souls to pry it open. A rush of stale air, pregnant with the scent of damp earth, embraced them as they descended the steps into the darkness below. Expecting to find a storage space, they were instead greeted by a solitary chair beneath a swaying light bulb, and on the wall behind it, a chilling display of familiarity photographs of them, moments captured from within the confines of their own home. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban dwelling amidst the winter's early darkness and the stark silhouette of barren trees. The aged 2-story structure, with its weathered siding and creaking floors, exuded a sense of character and history, a charm they had welcomed. Little did they anticipate the depth of history entwined within the walls, or the eerie collision it would have with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the property with her partner, the crime scene already sealed off with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's trembling voice had relayed the shocking discovery beneath their living room floor. "We must document everything before anyone else descends," Connors directed, donning latex gloves with a practiced ease. The camera flashes illuminated the stairwell as the forensic team meticulously captured the scene. The wooden steps groaned under their weight as they reached the small basement space, a room akin to a standard bedroom, with concrete walls painted a somber gray. A solitary chair anchored to the floor, beneath the harsh glare of the bare bulb casting dancing shadows around the room. Yet it was the row of photographs that seized their attention, 37 images, meticulously arranged in chronological order. "These date back almost 4 weeks," noted Connor's partner, studying the timestamps on the prints. "Look here, Mrs. Mercer napping on the couch, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the children in their rooms. The absence of forced entry, stolen possessions, or triggered alarms only deepened the mystery, leaving the family's sense of security shattered." As the investigation delved deeper, tracing the property's unsettling history through previous owners, a disquieting pattern emerged. The house had changed hands 6 times in a decade, each family departing within a year, selling at plummeting prices. None had breathed a word about a hidden basement. "We must interview every former owner," Connors instructed, flipping through her notes. The enigma unraveled further as they retraced the property's past. Inconsistencies in records, altered blueprints, and redacted reports hinted at a sinister secret buried within the walls. The pivotal breakthrough came from a contractor who had renovated the house years prior. His denial of the existence of the basement clashed with the evidence unearthed. Digital forensics unveiled a trove of images, not solely of the Mercers, but of the previous families, depicting intimate moments and mundane routines, all captured surreptitiously. A chilling revelation transpired with the recovery of audio files hidden in the basement, a voyeuristic record of conversations held within the house. Sophisticated microphones were suspected, yet no devices had been discovered initially. "We must inspect every nook and cranny," Connors urged, her tone weighted with urgency. The meticulous search uncovered a hidden passage behind the photographs, revealing a monitoring station with a laptop connected to wireless cameras and a journal brimming with meticulous observations on each family. The journal's entries grew increasingly unhinged, with phrases hinting at an unseen presence observing the families. The handwriting matched that of the house's original builder, Edward Kelvin, who had mysteriously vanished from public records during the house's construction. The final chilling entry: "The next family arrives tomorrow." Fingerprint analysis confirmed Kelvin's lingering presence within the house, orchestrating a macabre surveillance network from the shadows. The manhunt led to the discovery of Kelvin concealed within a crawlspace, his emaciated frame attuned to the hidden passages he had crafted. During interrogation, Kelvin spoke of the families as mere actors in his private drama, his detachment unsettling. A psychological evaluation diagnosed him with severe delusions, perceiving the families as temporary guests in his permanent abode. The Mercer family, like those before them, fled to tainted property, leaving behind possessions and memories. The trial unveiled the intricate web of surveillance Kelvin had woven within the house, shaping it into a voyeur's haven. As the property was razed and the families sought solace elsewhere, the lingering unease persisted, a specter of violated privacy haunting their thoughts. In moments of silence, they found themselves glancing warily at corners and fixtures, questioning the sanctity of their spaces. The realization dawned that they might never truly be alone, their lives documented by a phantom presence they had unknowingly shared their home with. And the house, now reduced to rubble, held within its demolished walls the echoes of lives observed, recorded, and forever altered by the unseen eyes that had watched them from within. Story 22: The Mystery of Reflections. She wiped away the steam on the mirror, gazing into her own reflection. Everything seemed normal, yet a subtle unease crept over her. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement not of her own. Turning away, her reflection remained motionless, watching. This was the pivotal moment that marked the beginning of Rebecca Thorne's strange journey. Rebecca resided in a quiet suburban area, living a solitary life in a modest apartment. Known for her reserved nature and meticulous habits, she worked as a data analyst, finding solace in routine and precision. Little did anyone expect that she would soon become entangled in a perplexing enigma that would baffle investigators and haunt the community for years to come. It all started with subtle disturbances in Rebecca's home. Objects shifted places, small changes that she initially dismissed as forgetfulness. But as the incidents persisted, she began to feel a growing sense of unease. When she finally reached out to the authorities, Detective Marion Shaw took note, though the case seemed more suited for mental health services than police intervention. The turning point came with the eerie incident in the bathroom mirror, where Rebecca's reflection seemed to move independently, a silent observer in her own home. Armed with evidence from a security camera, Rebecca revealed footage of a doppelganger entering her apartment while she was at work, identical in appearance and mannerisms. The investigation deepened as forensic analysis confirmed the authenticity of the footage, pointing to a meticulous impersonator who had studied Rebecca's life with alarming precision. Fingerprints matched only Rebecca's, and no foreign DNA was found, leaving a trail of confusion in the wake of the uncanny doppelganger. As the disturbances escalated, Rebecca's sense of reality began to unravel. Strange occurrences multiplied, from missing food to unexplained searches on her computer. The most unsettling discovery was a series of selfies on her phone, strikingly similar yet subtly wrong, hinting at a sinister agenda. A breakthrough emerged when a pattern was identified in the doppelganger's appearances, aligning with specific routines in Rebecca's schedule. The investigation honed in on a former colleague, Lily Winters, whose obsession with Rebecca had spiraled into a chilling fixation. A search of Lily's residence uncovered a disturbing replica of Rebecca's life, meticulously documented and painstakingly recreated. From wardrobe duplicates to mimicry videos, it was evident that Lily's intentions went beyond mere imitation. She sought to erase Rebecca and take her place. As authorities closed in on Lily, she vanished without a trace, leaving behind a cryptic journal hinting at a sinister motive. Despite extensive efforts, Lily remained elusive, her ultimate goal shrouded in mystery as Rebecca was forced to abandon her former life and embrace a new identity in seclusion. The case took a final, chilling turn when a doppelganger impersonating Rebecca was sighted at her former workplace, signaling that Lily had successfully assumed her identity. With the case still unresolved, the haunting question lingered: what became of the real Rebecca Thorne, and who was the woman now living in her stead? Detective Shaw, haunted by the enigmatic case, kept a reminder of the two women who had crossed paths in a web of deception. As she reflected on the tale of stolen identities and twisted desires, she imparted a sobering lesson to her colleagues: beyond appearances lies the fragile essence of identity, a treasure to be safeguarded at all costs, for sometimes the greatest threat may come from those who seek to claim it as their own. Story 23. The aged library faced its impending demolition, the workers nearing completion of the task at hand. Amidst the dust and debris, a moment of serendipity unfolded as one worker stumbled upon a concealed latch nestled within a bookshelf. With a gentle click, the entire case swung open, revealing a narrow passageway leading to a hidden chamber. The air within was dense, untouched by human hands for decades. The room was devoid of furnishings, save for a solitary chair stationed in the center, firmly bolted to the floor. Etched repeatedly on the wall, a haunting phrase lingered: "I am still here." The foreman overseeing the construction promptly radioed for the police, sensing that what had started as a routine demolition was now veering into darker territory. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 2 decades of experience, arrived at the scene. Standing in the doorway, his flashlight pierced the darkness, casting an eerie glow on the cryptic message that adorned the walls. "Secure the area," Walsh commanded the officers, his voice resonating in the cramped space. "No one disturbs anything until the forensics team arrives." The history of the building added a layer of intrigue to the unfolding mystery. The library had once belonged to the esteemed Harrington family, who had generously donated the establishment to the public following the mysterious disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. She had vanished during her final year of college, leaving behind only her abandoned car near the edge of the woods. Despite extensive searches and inquiries, her whereabouts remained a baffling enigma. The prevailing belief was that she had chosen to escape her life, yet her family vehemently rejected this notion, convinced that a more sinister fate had befallen her. As the forensic experts meticulously combed through the hidden chamber, they unearthed telltale traces of hair and fibers embedded in the chair. The scratches on the wall harbored faint hints of blood and skin cells beneath the layers of dust. Initial tests hinted at the biological material belonging to a young woman who had fought against her restraints with fervor. The puzzle was taking shape, hinting at a possible captive held against her will. Detective Walsh mobilized a team to delve into the labyrinthine history of the Harrington family. The timing of the library's donation after Rebecca's disappearance struck a dissonant chord in his mind. Further digging uncovered a disturbing detail. The bookshelf concealing the hidden room had been installed by a contractor exclusively hired by Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and the patriarch of the family. Financial records revealed exorbitant payments made to the contractor, far exceeding the standard costs of renovation. Former library staff interviewed in the wake of the discovery expressed shock at the revelation. None had been privy to the existence of the hidden chamber, although one elderly librarian recollected Maxwell's proclivity for solitude in that secluded part of the building after hours. She had assumed he sought solace for his avid reading habits, oblivious to the clandestine room concealed behind the shelves. The investigation took a grim turn when DNA analysis confirmed that the genetic material found in the hidden chamber matched samples from Rebecca's hairbrush recovered from her old bedroom. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, painting a chilling portrait of captivity and deceit. Rebecca had not fled her life as many had surmised. She had been ensnared behind the walls of her own family's library. With a warrant in hand, the detectives descended upon the Harrington estate. In Maxwell's private study, a concealed compartment yielded a leather-bound journal containing unsettling entries spanning several months. The final entry sent shivers down their spines. She threatened to expose me. I could not allow that. The room will hold her until she learns her place. Confronted with the damning evidence, Maxwell's veneer of innocence dissolved. She was a danger to everything I had built, he confessed, his voice devoid of remorse. Rebecca stumbled upon my financial misdeeds. The family's reputation was at stake. I could not let her tarnish it. The truth unfurled, revealing a web of lies and treachery that had ensnared an innocent soul. Beneath the floorboards of the hidden chamber, ground-penetrating radar detected a somber presence. Excavation unearthed Rebecca's skeletal remains, adorned with the silver bracelet gifted to her by her parents on her 20th birthday. The Harrington family, present at Maxwell's sentencing, bore witness to the long-overdue reckoning. Rebecca's mother clutched the recovered bracelet, a poignant memento of a life cut short by betrayal and malice. The demolition of the library ground to a halt, the site transformed into a place of mourning and remembrance. Locals left floral tributes at the entrance, honoring the memory of a young woman whose voice had echoed from beyond the grave, seeking justice and closure. In a tragic twist of fate, Rebecca's haunting message, "I am still here," etched into the walls, ensured that her story would be told, her legacy preserved in the annals of history. And as the dust settled on the library's forgotten secrets, the truth emerged from the shadows, casting a bittersweet light on a tale of darkness and redemption. Story 24, the forgotten box lay hidden under layers of clutter in the attic, untouched for years, holding secrets of the past residents of the house. Among the faded Polaroids of joyous occasions, there was one that stood out to Rebecca. It depicted a family on her very couch in her living room, but they were strangers to her. A lurking figure in the hallway cast a shadow over the captured moment, unnoticed by the smiling faces in the frame. As Rebecca descended the creaking staircase, a sense of unease settled in her chest, making the spacious house feel oppressively vast and empty. Placing the mysterious photo on her kitchen counter, she scrutinized the uncanny resemblance between her home and the unfamiliar family frozen in time. Detective Morgan, with his weathered jacket and piercing gaze, delved into the investigation, tracing the history of the house's previous occupants. The trail led to the Sutherlands, a family who had disappeared without a trace after residing in the house for just a year. Their abrupt vanishing echoed a pattern of families before them, all leaving behind no clues to their whereabouts. Forensic analysis of the photograph uncovered unsettling details, the presence of an unknown figure, always watching, always present before the family's disappearances. A connection was made to Samuel Whitfield, the elusive architect of the house, who had met a tragic end during construction. Yet his legacy seemed to linger in the house's dark history. Beneath the basement floor, a grim discovery awaited the preserved remains of all the missing families, hidden from sight, each with a story cut short by a malevolent force. The evidence pointed to a chilling conclusion. The house held dark secrets that transcended time and reason. Rebecca's relocation to a safe haven couldn't shield her from the ominous presence that loomed in the shadows. A haunting phone call in the dead of night, the mechanical click of a camera capturing unknown horrors, hinted at a malevolent force that refused to be forgotten. As the investigation unfolded, the enigma of Samuel Whitfield deepened, shrouded in mystery and deception. The empty house stood as a silent witness to the unsolved puzzle of its past, where new families might unknowingly tread into the clutches of a spectral watcher. In the realm of darkness, where the past intertwined with the present, the truth remained elusive, veiled in the shadows that whispered of unseen eyes watching, waiting for the next chapter to unfold in the chilling saga of the house's haunting legacy. Story 25. The tale unfolds in the quiet shadows of a costume shop on the brink of closure, where forgotten treasures were being sold off to scattered patrons. Amidst the dimly lit aisles, a woman's gaze alighted upon a mask tucked away on a dusty shelf, its delicate features possessing an unsettlingly lifelike quality. As she lifted it, a shiver of unknown origins traced her spine, yet she felt drawn to its mysterious allure. Placing the mask on the counter, the cashier hesitated, a flicker of unease crossing his features as he murmured, "That's not ours." Perplexed, the woman checked for a tag, only to find none adorning the mask. With a casual shrug, she decided to take it home, unaware of the enigmatic fate that awaited her. That very night, she awoke to a soft, almost imperceptible sound, a whisper of fabric shifting in the darkness. Her heart quickened as she scanned the room, her eyes drawn to the nightstand where the mask now sat, facing her with an eerie stillness. The woman, known as Catherine Reed, was discovered the following morning by a concerned neighbor. The front door stood slightly ajar, allowing a sliver of morning light to spill into the otherwise somber home. Upon entering, the neighbor stumbled upon a haunting scene that would perplex investigators for years to come. Catherine lay motionless on her bedroom floor, the mask inexplicably missing. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene, her presence a beacon of authority amidst the unsettling silence that enveloped the room. Forensics diligently captured the details as the shutters clicked rhythmically, a haunting melody against the backdrop of muted voices. A lone officer scribbled notes, observing no signs of forced entry. The detective, with a keen eye for the subtlest of clues, absorbed the scene's nuances: a partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass on the nightstand. Everything appeared ordinary, save for the tragic figure of a woman who would never again awaken. The medical examiner, his expression grave, puzzled over the cause of Catherine's demise. "No visible wounds, no signs of struggle," he remarked, gesturing towards her frozen visage etched with terror. Detective Morgan, her voice barely above a whisper, mused, "Something frightened her to the very core." Catherine, an art appraiser known for her meticulous nature, had possessed a keen eye for authenticity, a talent that had earned her praise among colleagues. Her boss reminisced during questioning. She could discern a forgery with but a glance, her attention to detail unparalleled. The detective couldn't help but wonder if Catherine's discerning eye had somehow sealed her tragic fate. The trail of mystery deepened with the discovery of security footage from the costume shop. The cashier's genuine bewilderment at the mask's existence raised more questions than answers. A visit to the now desolate shop unveiled a tale of eerie origins as the shop owner nervously revealed, "That mask surfaced during our liquidation sale, its origins a mystery. It never belonged to our inventory." Further probing unearthed a chilling pattern, microscopic fibers embedded in Catherine's fingertips, a blend of human hair and an unidentified organic substance defying modern analysis. Each victim, it seemed, had acquired a peculiar mask before meeting their untimely end, their expressions forever frozen in terror. A retired detective, a keeper of dark secrets, shared a revelation from a forgotten case, a ritual of soul transference hinted at by ancient symbols concealed within the masks. A journal hidden in Catherine's apartment unveiled her descent into a world of dread, her frantic entries detailing the mask's malevolent sentience, its insidious connection to a series of unexplained deaths. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place, the strange fibers, Catherine's haunting research, the grim tapestry of similar deaths spanning decades. The cause of Catherine's demise was finally unraveled, cardiac arrest induced by unfathomable fear. What unseen horror could provoke such paralyzing terror, snuffing out a life with naught but its chilling presence? As the investigation delved deeper, a surveillance tape from a vigilant neighbor's camera revealed a figure exiting Catherine's dwelling under the cloak of night, a mask adorning its visage. The figure moved with Catherine's gait, yet something was amiss, an uncanny stiffness, a mechanical imitation of life, a puppeteer donning the guise of its unwitting victim. An alert was issued for the elusive mask, but it remained elusive, vanishing into the shadows until whispers emerged of its reappearance in a distant vintage emporium. By the time authorities reached the shop, it had exchanged hands, its new owner's identity a mystery shrouded in darkness. The case, a riddle unsolved, lingered in the annals of law enforcement, a testament to the insidious legacy of a cursed artifact. The detective safeguarded Catherine's journal, a chilling testament to the inexplicable forces at play. In the stillness of night, she found herself jolting awake, a sense of unseen eyes fixed upon her. Securing her sanctuary against the unknown, she pondered the mask's insidious journey, its hunger for souls unabated across centuries. The mask, a malevolent specter lurking in the shadows, awaited its next unwitting victim, a vessel yearning to be filled with the essence of life. Its empty eye sockets, harbingers of dread, watched and waited, poised to ensnare another soul in its timeless dance of death. Story 26. She crossed the threshold, a dance of dust swirling in the stagnant air. The old house stood frozen in time, its walls shedding layers like memories, its furniture shrouded in white sheets like ghosts in slumber. Every step she took led to the same parlor, a room that held her in its tranquil embrace, refusing to release her to the outside world. The doors, like silent sentinels, guarded the secrets of the house, guiding her in circles of confusion and mystery. Backtracking, she found the front door vanished, leaving her stranded in a maze of forgotten whispers and hidden truths. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless form shifted the narrative of the abandoned Victorian, casting shadows on its once haunting allure. Detective Sarah Lynn stood at the threshold, observing as forensic experts moved through the murky interiors, their movements as ethereal as specters in the night. The house, once a mere curiosity, now held darker secrets beneath its decaying facade, a place where whispers lingered and shadows watched. The initial findings suggest a passage of approximately 3 days since her demise, the medical examiner murmured, his voice a soft echo in the silent room. Asphyxiation appears to be the cause of her departure from this world. Morgan sat serenely in the parlor, a portrait of serenity amidst the chaos of the investigation. No signs of struggle, no marks of resistance, just a peaceful repose that unsettled even the most seasoned investigators. Lind inquired about the discovery of the body, her partner recounting the tale of unsuspecting visitors stumbling upon the somber scene. The house, abandoned after the passing of its previous owner, held a history of neglect and obscurity, a realm where time stood still, and memories faded like echoes in the wind. Morgan, a young scholar with a passion for the enigmatic, had delved into the mysteries of the house, drawn by its reputation for defying logic and reason. Her journal spoke of strange occurrences, of doors that led to ever-shifting realities, and of a presence that lingered in the unseen corners of the Victorian labyrinth. As the investigation unfolded, traces of a rare substance were discovered in Morgan's system, a substance linked to ancient rituals and altered states of consciousness. Questions arose, whispers of shadows dancing on the edges of perception, leading Lynn deeper into the labyrinth of secrets that surrounded Morgan's untimely passing. Deleted messages hinted at a hidden connection, a bond forged in the shadows of the enigmatic house. Conversations veiled in mystery and intimacy, all pointing towards a truth that lay beyond the physical realm, in the spaces where reality blurred and dreams took flight. A revelation from an unexpected source shed light on the house's dark history, a legacy of souls claimed by its insidious influence. Generations of deaths, all shrouded in the veil of mystery and misconception, tied to a power that transcended the boundaries of the known world. A hidden chamber unveiled artifacts of ancient origins, a testament to a forgotten deity of thresholds and transitions. The echoes of the past reverberated in the stillness of the room, whispering of a power that transcended time and space, binding souls to a fate beyond comprehension. Forensic analysis revealed a presence lingering in the shadows, a phantom witness to Morgan's final moments. Partial fingerprints, like echoes of a past long forgotten, hinted at a silent observer, a ghost in the machine of the Victorians' intricate design. The tale took a tragic turn with the passing of Adam Reeves, his demise mirroring Morgan's in eerie symmetry. A key, a link to the hidden compartment, clutched in his lifeless hand, a silent testament to the house's grip on those who dared to unravel its mysteries. In his final words, Reeves spoke of perceptions twisted and truths obscured, of a reality that bent and twisted like the corridors of the Victorian house. The truth, a fleeting shadow in the night, remained just out of reach, a mirage in a desert of illusions and half-truths. The case, shrouded in shadows and unanswered questions, lingered in the minds of those who dared to tread the path of the unknown. The condemned Victorian stood as a silent sentinel, a monument to the enigmatic forces that bound it to the realm of the unseen. Whispers of lights flickering in the dark of night, of visitors vanishing into the depths of the house, echoed through the town like a haunting melody. Some spoke of a curse that claimed those who delved too deep, while others whispered of a power ancient and unfathomable, lurking in the spaces between worlds. The truth, a shimmering mirage on the horizon, beckoned to those who sought to uncover the secrets of the house, where all doors led back to the beginning, a place where reality and illusion intertwined, where the line between life and death blurred into obscurity. Story 27. In the quiet solitude of her mother's attic, Sarah Winters uncovered a forgotten treasure trove labeled Memories. Amongst the faded photographs chronicling past joys, a Polaroid stood out, a snapshot from a long-ago birthday celebration. Faces aglow with smiles, candles flickering in the soft light, nothing seemed amiss at first glance. Yet as Sarah sifted through the images, her gaze was drawn to a shadowy figure lurking in the background, just beyond the reach of the flickering candlelight. The mysterious man, half hidden in darkness, stood apart from the family group, a silent observer in each photograph. His presence puzzled Sarah, for no one could recall him being part of those cherished moments captured on film. With each passing photo, the figure seemed to draw closer, his form becoming more distinct, more tangible. As rain tapped gently against the attic windows, Sarah pondered the enigmatic stranger in the photos. She reached out to her father, her voice trembling with unease, seeking answers to the haunting mystery. His initial disbelief gave way to a sharp intake of breath as he too recognized the uninvited guest in the family album. Determined to unravel the eerie puzzle, Sarah sought the help of Detective Marcus Reed. Spread across his desk, the photographs told a silent tale of the shadowy figure's gradual approach towards the unsuspecting children in the frame. The detective's keen eyes traced the progression, his interest piqued by the unsettling pattern woven into the images. With a meticulous touch, a computer specialist enhanced the faded photographs, unveiling hidden details that had eluded detection for decades. Each image revealed more about the shadowy figure: a scar, a ring, a glimpse of a face previously shrouded in shadow. A breakthrough came in the form of dental records, linking the mysterious man to a long-forgotten maintenance worker named Robert Keller. His disappearance years ago had been tied to unsolved child abductions in the region, cases that had haunted families for generations. As the investigation delved deeper, a chilling connection emerged between Keller and the vanished children from past family gatherings. The truth lay buried beneath the concrete foundations of his former residence, where small, poignant mementos spoke of lives interrupted and innocence stolen. Alone in her apartment, Sarah confronted the grim reality uncovered by the relentless pursuit of justice. The figure in the photos, once a silent specter haunting her past, now stood exposed in the harsh light of truth. Families found closure in the revelations brought to light, a bittersweet resolution to the long-held mysteries that had shadowed their lives. The photographs, once cherished memories frozen in time, now served as poignant reminders of the unseen threats that lurk in the shadows of celebration. As Sarah placed them back in the box, she knew that some secrets, no matter how well hidden, would eventually come to light, their echoes reverberating through the corridors of time. In the quiet of her apartment, the shadows whispered their secrets, a haunting lullaby that spoke of the price paid for uncovering the hidden figures that moved unseen through the tapestry of memory.